The rain came down like punishment. Cold. Relentless. Each drop a tiny blade against skin already too bruised to feel much of anything anymore. She ran through the forest with her hands pressed against her stomach, fingers splayed wide as if she could shield what grew inside her from the violence of the world. The trees blurred past in streaks of black and gray, their branches clawing at her cloak, snagging fabric, drawing blood from her cheek. She didn't slow down. Couldn't. Behind her, the howls rose again, savage, hungry, getting closer. They were hunting her. Not for what she'd done. For what she carried. Her feet slipped on wet leaves and exposed roots, and for one heart-stopping moment, she felt herself falling. Her body twisted instinctively, protecting her belly as she crashed against the muddy ground. Pain exploded through her shoulder, but she swallowed the cry before it could escape. Sound was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not here. Not tonight. She pushed herself up with trembling arms, mud coating her palms, her knees, soaking through the thin fabric of her dress. The cold bit deeper now, settling into her bones, but the chill wasn't what made her shake. It was the terror. The kind that lived in your chest and wrapped around your lungs until every breath felt like drowning. She forced herself to move again, stumbling forward through the underbrush. The storm overhead rumbled, a low growl that matched the chaos in her heart. Lightning split the sky, casting everything in stark white for just a second, long enough for her to see how far she'd come from the Packlands. Not far enough. Never far enough. The border was still miles away, and even if she reached it, what then? Where could she go that they wouldn't follow? Where could she hide when the thing inside her pulsed with a power so ancient, so unmistakable, that every wolf within 100 miles would sense it the moment it woke? Her children. Twins. She'd known for 3 weeks now, though it felt like a lifetime. 3 weeks since the healer had looked at her with eyes full of pity and wonder and whispered the truth she'd been too afraid to face. 3 weeks since she'd felt the first flutter of life, 2 heartbeats, faint but persistent, thrumming beneath her own. And 3 weeks since she'd understood with brutal clarity that she could never let him know. The alpha who rejected her. The man who stood beneath the full moon 6 months ago and severed their bond with words that still carved through her like glass. I, Draven Blackthorn, alpha of the Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Kaya Thorn, as my mate and Luna. You are not strong enough. You are not worthy. And I will not let weakness infect my bloodline. She'd felt the bond snap. Felt it tear through her chest like a living thing dying. The pain had been so absolute, so consuming, that she'd collapsed right there in front of the entire pack. No one helped her up. No one spoke in her defense. They'd all just watched as their alpha turned his back on the mate the moon goddess herself had chosen for him. Watched as he walked away without a single glance over his shoulder. Watched as she bled invisible wounds onto the sacred ground and choked on her own heartbreak. Omega. That's what they called her. Weak. Powerless. Unworthy of an alpha's attention, let alone his devotion. But they didn't know. None of them knew. What lived inside her wasn't weakness. It was the opposite. A power so old the elders had forgotten its name. A magic that hadn't surfaced in the bloodlines for over 300 years. And now it pulsed in her womb, split between 2 tiny lives who would either save the wolves or destroy them. The prophecy had been clear about that much. She stumbled again, catching herself against a tree. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each one scraping her throat raw. She needed to stop. Needed to rest. But the howls behind her grew louder, more frenzied. They'd picked up her scent. Blood. Fear. Desperation. It painted a trail through the forest as clear as breadcrumbs, and she had no way to cover it. No way to hide. Her wolf stirred inside her, weak but present. It wanted to fight. Wanted to turn and bare teeth and prove to the world that they were not prey. But she couldn't shift. Not now. Not pregnant with twins whose very existence defied nature. The healers had warned her, shifting could kill them. could tear them apart before they'd even had a chance to live. So she ran on 2 legs instead of 4, slower, more vulnerable, but alive. Still alive. The forest opened suddenly into a ravine, and she skidded to a halt at the edge. Below, the river roared swollen from the storm, dark and violent, churning with debris. There was no bridge, no path across. Just a 20-foot drop into water that would swallow her whole and never give her back. Behind her, branches snapped. Footsteps. Voices. Close now. Too close. She came this way. I can smell her. Spread out. She can't have gone far. The Alpha wants her found before dawn. Dead or alive, he said. But the children, we take them breathing. Her blood turned to ice. So Draven knew. Somehow he knew. And he'd sent hunters. Not to bring her home. Not to apologize or beg forgiveness. But to rip the children from her body and claim them as his own. The future of his pack. The heirs he'd always wanted. Just, without her. Something inside her cracked. Not her heart. That had already shattered months ago. This was something deeper. Older. A part of her she didn't recognize but had always been there, dormant, waiting. It unfurled now like wings inside her chest, dark and burning and absolutely furious. She turned away from the ravine and faced the forest. The hunters emerged from the trees like shadows given form. 5 of them. All male. All larger than her. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, gold and amber and cold, predatory green. They fanned out in a half-circle, cutting off any chance of escape. One of them grinned, teeth flashing white. Thought you could run, Omega? She didn't answer. Just lifted her chin and met his gaze without flinching. Let him see that she wasn't afraid. Or if she was, she'd buried it so deep beneath rage and grief that it didn't matter anymore. The largest one stepped forward, a beta named Corvin, one of Draven's most loyal enforcers. He'd never liked her. Even before the rejection, he looked at her like she was something dirty. Something that didn't belong. The Alpha gave you a choice, Corvin said, his voice low and measured. Come quietly, surrender the children, and you'll be allowed to live. Fight us, and we take them anyway. Your call. Those children are mine. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Stronger. And I will die before I let you touch them. Corvin's smile faded. So be it. He lunged. But something happened. Something she didn't plan. Didn't expect. The air around her ignited. Not with fire. Not exactly. But with light, silver and blinding, crackling like lightning across her skin. The hunters stumbled back, shielding their eyes, snarling in confusion. She felt it now, the power that had been sleeping inside her for so long, finally waking. It surged through her veins like molten metal, burning and freezing all at once. Her hands glowed. Her eyes, she could feel them changing, brightening, reflecting something ancient and otherworldly. What is she? One of the hunters hissed. Corvin's face twisted with fury, or was it fear? Take her down. Now. They came at her all at once. And the world exploded. The light erupted outward in a shockwave that threw all 5 hunters off their feet. They hit the ground hard, groaning, stunned. She stood in the center of the chaos, shaking, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst. The power receded as quickly as it had come, leaving her weak, gasping, barely able to stand. But she'd bought herself seconds. Maybe a minute. She turned and ran. Not toward the ravine. That was suicide. But along its edge, following the curve of the land, hoping, praying that somewhere ahead there'd be a way down. A way across. A way out. Her legs screamed. Her lungs burned. The rain pounded harder, soaking her to the bone, making every step treacherous. She could hear them behind her again, recovering, shouting, closing the distance. They were faster. Stronger. And she was running on borrowed time. The trees thinned ahead, and she saw it, a narrow bridge, old and rotting, spanning the ravine. She didn't hesitate. Didn't think. just ran for it with everything she had left. Her boots hit the wooden planks, and they groaned beneath her weight. The bridge swayed dangerously, and she grabbed the frayed rope railing, willing herself not to look down. Don't look. Don't think. Just move. She was halfway across when the first plank gave way. Her foot plunged through, and she screamed, catching herself on the railing. Splinters tore into her palms, but she held on, dragging herself forward. Another plank cracked. Then another. The entire structure was collapsing beneath her, and the river below roared like a beast waiting to devour her. Behind her, Corvin reached the bridge. He hesitated, testing the wood with one boot. It groaned, but held. "You're not getting away, Omega," he called over the storm. "Give up. Make this easy." She pulled herself forward, ignoring the pain, ignoring the fear. 3 more steps. 2. 1. Her hands touched solid ground just as the bridge gave a final, splintering groan and collapsed into the ravine. She rolled onto her back, gasping, staring up at the sky as rain poured into her open mouth. Across the gap, Corvin stood on the opposite side, furious and impotent. He couldn't follow. Not now. Not without going miles out of his way. She'd won. For now. But as she lay there, shaking and soaked and utterly broken, she realized something that made her blood run cold. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. And somewhere out there, in the packlands she'd fled, the alpha who'd rejected her was about to learn a truth that would bring him to his knees. She was carrying the future of his pack. And she was never, ever coming back. She didn't know how long she lay there. Minutes. Hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. The rain continued its assault, colder now, each drop like a needle against her skin. Her body screamed at her to move, to find shelter, but every muscle had turned to stone. The adrenaline that had carried her through the chase was gone, leaving behind only exhaustion so complete it felt like drowning. Her hands still trembled against her stomach. Still protecting. Always protecting. The twins were quiet inside her, too quiet, and panic fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. She pressed her palms harder against her belly, willing them to move, to kick, to give her some sign they'd survive the fall, the bridge, the terror. Nothing. Just silence. And the worst thoughts a mother could have began creeping in like poison. What if the power had hurt them? What if running had been the thing that killed them? What if she'd already lost everything? A sob tore from her throat before she could stop it, raw and broken and utterly helpless. She turned onto her side, curling around her stomach, letting the rain mix with tears she'd been holding back for months. Not just tonight, but since the rejection. Since the moment Draven had looked at her with those cold, dismissive eyes and declared her worthless. She'd believed him. Some part of her still did. That's what made it all so unbearable. A sound cut through the storm. Not a howl. Something else. Footsteps. Deliberate. Approaching from the forest behind her. Her body went rigid. No. Not again. She couldn't run anymore. Couldn't fight. Could barely breathe. If Corvin had found another way across, if the hunters had circled back. Easy. The voice was low, calm, cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. "I'm not here to hurt you." She forced herself to look up, rain streaming into her eyes, blurring her vision. Through the darkness and downpour, a figure emerged from the tree-lean. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of predatory grace that marked an alpha or something close to it. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for just a second. Sharp features. Dark hair plastered to his forehead. Eyes that glowed amber in the darkness, but not with cruelty. With something else. Something that made her breath catch despite the fear. Recognition. Kaya. Her name. He knew her name. She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out. He moved faster than she could track, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. Before she could protest, he was kneeling beside her, one hand hovering near her shoulder but not touching. asking permission without words. How do you know who I am? Her voice came out hoarse, broken, barely audible over the storm. I've been watching you. His tone held no apology, just fact. For weeks now. That should have terrified her. Should have sent every instinct screaming. But there was something in his voice, exhaustion, maybe, or honesty so raw it couldn't be faked, that made her pause. Why? She managed to sit up, though the world spun dangerously. Who are you? My name is Kieran. He pulled his cloak off in one smooth motion and draped it around her shoulders before she could refuse. The fabric was warm, impossibly warm, and smelled like pine and smoke and something wild. And you're being hunted by people who don't deserve to breathe the same air as you. She clutched the cloak tighter, her fingers numb. That doesn't answer my question. No, he agreed. It doesn't. He studied her face, and she saw something flicker in his expression, concern, maybe, or calculation. But right now, the only question that matters is whether you want to live. Because those hunters will find another way across. And when they do, you won't survive a second encounter. I'll take my chances. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled immediately. He caught her before she hit the ground, his hands strong and steady on her arms. The touch sent a jolt through her, not unpleasant, but startling. Electric. He felt it too. She saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes darkened. You're hurt, he said quietly. Exhausted. Pregnant with twins he stopped himself, but the damage was done. Her blood turned to ice. How do you know that? Because I can feel them. His voice dropped even lower, almost reverent. Their power. It's extraordinary. Even now, barely formed, they're calling to something ancient. Something that should have stayed buried. She jerked away from him, or tried to. But her body wouldn't cooperate. Stay away from me. Stay away from them. I'm not your enemy, Kaya. He didn't try to grab her again. Just stayed where he was, hands raised slightly, showing he was no threat. I know what Draven did to you. I know about the rejection. And I know what you're carrying is the only thing that can stop what's coming. What's coming? The words felt like ash in her mouth. Kieran's expression darkened. War. The pacts are fracturing. The old alliances are breaking. And there's a prophecy, an ancient one, that speaks of twins born under the blood moon. Children who carry the power of the first wolves. The ones who walked with gods. She shook her head, even though somewhere deep inside, she'd known. Had felt the truth of it the moment the healer placed a hand on her stomach and went pale. That's just a story. Stories don't make alphas send death squads after pregnant omegas. His words were sharp, cutting through her denial. You know what you felt back there. The light. The power. That wasn't you, Kaya. That was them. Protecting their mother. And they're only going to get stronger. The truth of it settled over her like a weight. She wanted to argue, to deny, to pretend this was all some nightmare she'd wake from. But she couldn't. Because he was right. She had felt it. Had felt something impossibly old and powerful surge through her when those hunters attacked. Something that didn't belong to her, but came from the lives growing inside her womb. Why are you here? She whispered. What do you want from me? Kieran was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something she hadn't expected. Regret. I was sent to find you. But not by Draven. Then who? Someone who believes those children deserve to live. Someone who thinks maybe the prophecy isn't about destruction, it's about salvation. He met her eyes, and she saw the weight he carried in his gaze. Old grief. Deep scars. I lost my pack 3 years ago. Watched them die because we weren't strong enough to stand against the darkness spreading through the territories. I won't watch that happen again. So you want to use my children? The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Just like Draven. Just like everyone else. No, the word came out fierce. Absolute. I want to keep them alive. Keep you alive. Because if you die, they die. And if they die, every wolf in this kingdom is going to follow. She searched his face for the lie. For the manipulation. But all she found was brutal honesty and something else. Something that made her chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. He believed what he was saying. Believed it with everything he was. "I don't trust you," she said finally. "Good." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You shouldn't. But trust me or not, you're dying out here. Hypothermia is setting in. You're bleeding." His eyes dropped to her leg, and she followed his gaze. Blood seeped through her dress, dark and steady. She hadn't even felt the wound. "And those children need you strong." She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him to leave her alone, that she'd survived this long without help and she'd keep surviving. But the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. She was dying. Slowly, maybe, but inevitably. And if she died, so did the twins. So did the only good thing that had come from the worst moment of her life. "Where would you take me?" Her voice was so small now. Defeated. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere even Draven's hunters won't find you." Kieran stood slowly, offering her his hand. "A sanctuary that exists outside Pack Law, where the old magic still lives." "And if I say no?" His expression softened. "Then I'll stay here with you until morning. Make sure you don't die alone. But I won't force you to come. That choice is yours, Kaya. It's always been yours." The rain began to ease, fading from a downpour to a steady drizzle. Through the clouds, the moon broke free, full and impossibly bright, casting silver light across the ravine. It touched Kieran's face, and for just a moment, she saw past the alpha exterior to something more human. More broken. He understood. What it meant to lose everything. What it cost to keep breathing when the world told you to lie down and die. She looked at his hand. Scarred. Strong. Steady. And then she looked at the forest behind her. Dark. Empty. Full of hunters who would never stop coming. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm, careful, achingly gentle, and he pulled her to her feet. Her legs shook, but he steadied her, one arm sliding around her waist to take her weight. She should have pulled away. Should have put distance between them. But she was so tired. So cold. And his warmth was the first thing in months that didn't hurt. "I've got you," he murmured. Not a command. A promise. And despite everything, despite the fear and the pain and the absolute certainty that trusting anyone ever again was the worst mistake she could make, she believed him. He lifted her carefully, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. She was too exhausted to protest. Too broken to care. Her head fell against his shoulder, and she felt his heartbeat beneath her cheek, steady, strong, alive. "The sanctuary," she whispered. "How far?" 2 days on foot. Less if we move fast." He started walking, his steps sure even on the treacherous ground. "But we need to get you warm and fed first. There's a safe house 1/2 mile from here. We'll rest there until you're strong enough to travel." She wanted to ask more questions. Wanted to know who he really was, what he'd lost, why he'd been watching her. But the exhaustion pulled at her like a tide, dragging her under. Her eyes grew heavy, and the last thing she felt before darkness claimed her was his arms tightening around her. Protective. Possessive. And something that felt dangerously close to right. When she woke, the world had changed. She was no longer outside. No longer cold. She lay on something soft, a bed, maybe, or a pile of furs, in a room lit by firelight. The flames crackled nearby, casting dancing shadows across rough stone walls. The air smelled like herbs and wood smoke, and something cooking that made her stomach clench with hunger. She tried to sit up, and pain lanced through her side. A bandage wrapped around her ribs, clean and expertly tied. Someone had changed her clothes. The muddy, torn dress was gone, replaced by a soft tunic and loose pants. Her hair had been brushed and braided. Her wounds tended. Panic flared. She touched her stomach frantically, searching for any sign of harm. "They're fine." Kieran's voice came from the corner of the room. She turned her head and found him sitting in a wooden chair, elbows on his knees, watching her with those unsettling amber eyes. He looked exhausted, shadows beneath his eyes, tension in his shoulders. Like he'd been awake all night, watching over her. How long was I asleep? Her throat felt like sandpaper. 18 hours. He stood and crossed to the fire, ladling something from a pot into a wooden bowl. You were hypothermic. Malnourished. Your body shut down the moment it felt safe. He brought the bowl to her, soup, thick with vegetables and meat. The smell alone made her dizzy with hunger. She took it with shaking hands, and he sat on the edge of the bed, close but not touching. Eat slowly, he said. You haven't had real food in weeks. Your stomach will rebel if you rush. She wanted to snap at him, tell him to stop acting like he knew her. But he was right. Again. So she took small, careful sips, letting the warmth spread through her chest. You changed my clothes, she said after a moment. I had help. He gestured to a corner she hadn't noticed before. An older woman sat there, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. This is Mira. She's a healer. She's the one who tended your wounds. Mira looked up and offered a small, kind smile. You gave us quite a scare, child. But you're strong. Stronger than most would be in your condition. Kaya's grip tightened on the bowl. My children. Are they? They're perfect. Mira set down her tools and moved closer, her movements slow and unthreatening. I've been a midwife for 40 years, and I've never felt anything like them. Their heartbeats are strong. Their essence is remarkable. Remarkable how? Mira exchanged a glance with Kieran. Something passed between them, understanding, maybe, or concern. They're aware, Mira said finally. More aware than any unborn children should be. When I placed my hands on your stomach, they responded. Not just with movement, but with intention. Like they knew I was trying to help. A chill ran down Kaya's spine. That's not possible. Most things about your situation aren't possible. Kieran's voice was quiet. But here we are. She finished the soup in silence, her mind racing. Everything he'd said in the forest came rushing back. The prophecy. The war. The power that would either save the wolves or destroy them. And she was caught in the center of it, carrying 2 lives that apparently defied every law of nature. I need to know the truth. She set the bowl aside and met Kieran's gaze. All of it. Who sent you? What do they want? And why should I believe you're any different from Draven? Kieran was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the fire, staring into the flames like they held answers he didn't want to give. My pack was called Nightshade, he said finally. We were small. Only 30 wolves. But we were happy. We had land, resources, peace. And then 3 years ago, something came from the northern wastes. Something old. Something wrong. What kind of something? Kaya asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Shadow beasts. Creatures made of darkness and hunger. They slaughtered half my pack in a single night. The rest of us fought, but it wasn't enough. We were too weak. Our bloodlines too diluted. We needed the power of the first wolves, the ones who could stand against gods. But that power was lost centuries ago. He turned to face her, and the grief in his eyes was almost too much to bear. Until a seer told me it wasn't lost. It was sleeping, waiting for the right vessel. Twins born under the blood moon, carrying the essence of the first wolves in their very marrow. And when I heard about a rejected Omega who'd conceived despite the severed bond, I knew. Knew what? That the moon goddess hadn't abandoned us. She'd just been waiting for the right moment. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Waiting for you. The weight of it crushed her. I'm nobody. I'm just. You're everything. Kieran crossed back to her, kneeling beside the bed so they were eye level. You survived a rejection that should have killed you. You're carrying twins who shouldn't exist. You manifested power that's been extinct for 300 years. You're not nobody, Kaya. You're the one thing standing between survival and extinction. I didn't ask for this. Her voice broke. I just wanted to be normal. To be loved. To matter to someone. You matter to me. The words hung in the air between them, raw, honest, impossible. She searched his face, looking for the lie. But all she found was truth. And it terrified her. Because the last man who'd looked at her with anything close to want had destroyed her. And she didn't think she could survive that kind of pain again. I can't trust you, she whispered. I know. Kieran's hand moved slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was featherlight. Careful. But maybe you don't have to trust me yet. Maybe you just have to let me prove I'm not him. The fire crackled. Mira moved quietly in the background, giving them privacy. And Kaya felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, but opening, letting in just the smallest sliver of light. Who sent you? She asked again. Who believes my children should live? Kieran smiled, sad, tired, but real. An alpha who lost everything and decided to spend what's left of her life making sure no one else has to. Her name is Talia. And she's been waiting a very long time to meet you. The name hung in the air like smoke. Talia. Kaya had heard it before. Whispered in the dark corners of pack gatherings when the elders thought no one was listening. Spoken with equal parts reverence and fear by wolves who remembered the old ways. Talia Moonshadow, the alpha who walked away from power. Who'd refused a seat on the High Council and vanished into myth 20 years ago, leaving behind a legacy wrapped in mystery and blood. And now, apparently, she wanted to meet the rejected Omega carrying impossible children. Kaya's stomach twisted. Why would someone like her care about me? Kieran stood, moving back to the fire. His shoulders carried a tension she was beginning to recognize, the weight of secrets he didn't want to share but knew he had to. Because she understands what it's like to be cast aside by the very people who should have protected you. Because she's seen what happens when power is hoarded by those too afraid to wield it properly. And because he paused, his jaw working. Because she lost her own children to the same darkness that's spreading now. And she won't let it happen again. The grief in his voice was palpable. Raw. Like an open wound that had never healed. Mira made a soft sound from her corner, something between sympathy and understanding, and busied herself with her herbs. Giving them space. Giving him time to gather himself. Kaya pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She wanted to ask more about Talia, about the children, about the darkness. But something else clawed at her first. Something that had been eating at her since she'd opened her eyes. How did Draven find out? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. About the twins. I told no one. The healer swore she'd keep my secret. Kieran turned, and the look on his face made her chest tighten. Not pity. Something worse. Anger. The healer kept your secret, he said carefully. But someone else didn't. Cold dread settled in her stomach. Who? Your friend. Linnea. The name hit her like a fist. Linnea. Sweet, gentle Linnea who'd held her hand through the worst nights after the rejection. Who'd brought her food when she couldn't leave her room. Who'd sworn she'd stand by Kaya no matter what the pack said. No, Kaya shook her head, denial rising like bile. That's not possible. Linnea would never. She was in love with him. Kieran's words were brutal in their simplicity. With Draven. Had been for years. And when he rejected you, she saw an opportunity. Told herself that if she could prove you were carrying his heirs, children he desperately needed, he'd reward her. Maybe even choose her as his Luna. The betrayal cut deeper than the rejection had. Because Draven had never promised her loyalty. But Linnea had. Linnea had looked her in the eyes and sworn friendship. Had held her while she sobbed. Had whispered promises that everything would be okay. All while planning to sell her out. How do you know this? Kaya's voice shook. Because I was there the night she went to him. Kieran's expression darkened. I'd been tracking your movements, trying to find the right moment to approach you. And I saw her slip into his chambers after midnight. Heard her tell him everything. The pregnancy. The twins. The power she'd felt radiating from you when she touched your hand. Kaya's breath came in short, sharp gasps. The room spun. And what did he do? He thanked her. Promised her a place in his inner circle. Kieran's voice was flat now. Emotionless. Like he was reciting facts instead of describing the death of someone's hope. And then he sent her away and called his hunters. Gave them orders to retrieve the children. By any means necessary. She couldn't finish the question. Couldn't force the words past the knot in her throat. No, Kieran's answer was immediate. Certain. He didn't ask about you. Didn't mention your name. It was like you'd already stopped existing to him. The only thing that mattered was what you carried. The truth of it settled over her like ash. She'd known, on some level, that Draven had never loved her. The mate bond had been an inconvenience to him, nothing more. Something thrust upon him by fate that he'd resented from the moment it snapped into place. But hearing it confirmed, hearing that even after everything, even knowing she was carrying his children, he still saw her as nothing more than a vessel. It broke something inside her that she hadn't realized was still whole. I was never real to him, she whispered. Was I? Kieran crossed the room and knelt beside her again, his eyes fierce. His inability to see your worth doesn't diminish it. Do you understand that? He's a fool. A blind, arrogant fool who threw away the greatest gift the moon goddess could have given him. Then why does it still hurt? The question came out broken. Childlike. Why can't I just hate him and be done? Because you're not like him. Kieran's hand found hers, his grip warm and grounding. You feel things. Deep, real things. And that's not weakness, Kaya. That's what makes you dangerous. She looked at their joined hands. His was scarred, the knuckles rough from fights she could only imagine. Hers was small by comparison, pale and marked with fading bruises from her flight through the forest. But together, they looked right. Like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was trying to solve. She pulled away. Not because it felt wrong. Because it felt too right. And she couldn't afford that. Not now. Maybe not ever. Tell me about the power, she said, changing the subject before she could do something stupid. The light. What was it? Kieran stood, giving her space. You really don't know? If I knew, I wouldn't be asking. He exchanged another look with Mira, who set down her herbs and moved closer. The old healer's eyes were kind but serious as she studied Kaya. May I? Mira gestured to Kaya's hands. Kaya hesitated, then nodded. Mira took her hands gently, turning them palm up in the firelight. The skin there was unmarked now, no sign of the silver glow that had erupted from her. But Mira traced patterns on her palms with one weathered finger, and Kaya felt something stir inside her. Not painful. Just aware. You carry the blood of the first wolves, Mira said softly. The ones who walked in the time before time. Who spoke with the moon goddess directly and channeled her power through their very bones. That bloodline was thought to be extinct. Bred out over centuries of dilution and mixing. But it's not extinct, child. It's been sleeping. Waiting. Waiting for what? For a vessel pure enough to hold it. Myra's fingers stilled on her palms. And for a catalyst strong enough to wake it. Kaya's throat tightened. The rejection. Yes. Mira released her hands. When Draven severed your bond, he didn't just break your heart. He shattered something in your essence. Something that had been keeping the power dormant. And in that moment of absolute devastation, when you thought you were dying, the ancient magic recognized you. Claimed you. And began to wake. But I didn't feel anything, Kaya protested. Not until tonight. Not until the twins quickened inside you. Kieran finished her thought. The power isn't just yours, Kaya. It's theirs too. You're the vessel. But they're the key. And together, you're something this world hasn't seen in over 300 years. She looked down at her stomach, still flat enough that no one would know by looking. But she could feel them now. Two distinct presences, tiny and fierce, pulsing with life. With potential. With something that felt far older than it should. What am I supposed to do with this? Her voice cracked. I don't want to be special. I don't want to be important. I just want to keep my baby safe. I know. Kieran's voice gentled. But the world doesn't care what you want. It only cares what you are. And right now, you're the only hope we have. That's not fair. No, he agreed. It's not. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Kaya stared into the fire, watching the flames dance and twist, and let herself remember. Let herself fall back into the memories she'd been trying so hard to bury. 6 months ago, the night of the full moon. She'd known something was wrong the moment she woke. The mate bond, usually a quiet hum in the back of her mind, felt different. Strained. Like a rope pulled too tight. She'd dressed quickly, ignoring the worried looks from the other Omegas in the communal sleeping quarters, and made her way to the pack square. The entire pack had gathered. Hundreds of wolves, all facing the raised platform where the Alpha stood. Draven Blackthorn, tall and commanding, his dark hair silver in the moonlight. He'd been her mate for 3 months. 3 months of stolen glances and careful distance. 3 months of him avoiding her except when protocol demanded otherwise. She'd told herself it was normal. That he was busy. That leading a pack of over 500 wolves left little time for romance. She'd been lying to herself. He'd spotted her in the crowd, and something cold had flashed in his eyes. Not hatred. Worse. Indifference. Kaya Thorne, he'd called out, his voice carrying across the square. Come forward. Every eye had turned to her. She'd felt their weight like physical things, pressing down, suffocating. But she'd walked forward because what else could she do? He was her alpha. Her mate. The other half of her soul. Except he wasn't. She'd climbed the steps to the platform on legs that felt like water. Stood before him. Looked up into eyes that held nothing but cold calculation. I, Draven Blackthorn, alpha of the Silvercrest pack, he'd begun, and her world had started to crumble before he'd even finished the words, reject you, Kaya Thorne, as my mate and Luna. The bond had snapped. She'd felt it tear through her chest, through her soul, like someone had reached inside and ripped out her spine. Pain so absolute it stopped being pain and became something else. Something that had no name. She'd collapsed, her scream silent, because her lungs had forgotten how to work. No one had moved. No one had helped. They'd all just watched as their alpha delivered his verdict. You are not strong enough. You are not worthy. And I will not let weakness infect my bloodline. He'd turned his back on her then. Walked away while she bled invisible wounds onto sacred ground. And the pack had followed him, one by one, until only a few remained. Linnea had been one of them. Had rushed forward, helped Kaya to her feet, whispered meaningless comfort. All while planning her betrayal. Kaya blinked, pulling herself back to the present. Her cheeks were wet. She hadn't realized she was crying. I believed him, she whispered. When he said I was weak. I believed it. And now? Kieran asked. She looked at her hands. Thought about the silver light. The power that had thrown 5 grown wolves like they weighed nothing. The lives growing inside her that pulsed with magic older than memory. Now I don't know what I believe. That's honest. Kieran moved to the window, just a narrow slit in the stone wall, and looked out at the dawn beginning to break. And honesty is more than most people can manage. Talia. Kaya spoke the name carefully, testing it. When do I meet her? When you're strong enough to travel. The sanctuary is 2 days east. Through territories that don't answer to the High Council. He glanced back at her. But I won't force you to go. If you want to run, find your own path, I'll give you supplies and directions. The choice is yours. It was the second time he'd offered her a choice. The second time he'd made it clear her agency mattered to him. Draven had never done that. Not once. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why do you care? You don't know me. These aren't your children. This isn't your fight. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old ghosts. I told you I lost my pack. That shadow beasts came and slaughtered them. He turned fully to face her. What I didn't tell you is that I had a mate. Alara. She was pregnant when they attacked. 6 months along. We thought we had time. Thought we were safe. Kaya's heart clenched. Kieran. They killed her first. His words were flat. Mechanical. Tore her apart in front of me while I fought to reach her. And when I finally broke free, when I got to her body, I felt it. The life inside her. Our daughter. Still alive. Still fighting. Tears blurred Kaya's vision. No. I tried to save her. Cut her free. But I was too late. She died in my hands. This tiny, perfect thing who never got to take a breath. He looked at his scarred hands like they belonged to someone else. And I swore that if the moon goddess ever gave me a chance to protect another life like that, another child who deserved to live, I would do it. No matter the cost. Understanding crashed over her. This wasn't about prophecies or power or saving the wolves. This was about a man who'd failed once and was desperate to prove he could succeed. Who saw in her children a chance at redemption. It should have made her angry. Should have felt like she was being used. But all she felt was a deep, aching kinship. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. Kieran's eyes met hers, and she saw the steel beneath the grief. Just let me help you. Let me make sure your children get to live. That's all I'm asking. She thought about running. About taking his supplies and disappearing into the wild territories where no pack could find her. About raising her children alone, away from prophecies and wars and the weight of impossible expectations. But she thought about the hunters too. About Corvin's face when he lunged for her. About Draven's cold indifference. About the shadow beasts that had killed Kieran's mate and child. And she realized something that made her stomach turn. Alone, she would die. And her children with her. But with Kieran, with Talia and whatever sanctuary they offered, maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. Okay, she said quietly. I'll go. I'll meet her. Relief flooded Kieran's face, so profound it was almost painful to witness. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Kaya's hand moved to her stomach. If your prophecy is wrong, if my children can't do what you think they can, then we'll figure it out together. He crossed to her, and this time when he took her hand, she didn't pull away. But they're not wrong, Kaya. I can feel it. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that the moon goddess had a plan, that this nightmare had purpose. But trust was a luxury. She'd lost the night Draven rejected her. All she had left was hope. And sometimes, hope had to be enough. They left at dusk 2 days later. Kaya's wounds had healed enough to walk, though Mira had insisted on wrapping her ribs tight and packing enough herbs to treat an army. The old healer had also given her something else, a pendant that hung heavy against her chest. Ancient silver, carved with symbols Kaya didn't recognize. Spirals and crescents and something that might have been a wolf, or might have been something older. It belonged to my grandmother, Mira had said as she'd fastened it around Kaya's neck. And her grandmother before that. It's been passed down through my line for generations, waiting for the one who'd need it most. I can't take this, Kaya had protested. But Mira had simply smiled, sad and knowing. You already have, child. The moment you survived that rejection, the moment you conceived those impossible children, you took on a burden my family has been preparing for since the first wolves walked. Wear it. It will recognize you when the time comes. Kaya hadn't understood then. Still didn't, really. But the pendant pulsed against her skin with a warmth that felt almost alive, and she'd stopped questioning it. Now she walked beside Kieran through a forest that seemed to exist outside of normal geography. The trees here were older, their trunks wider than houses, their branches forming a canopy so thick that even at midday it felt like twilight. Moss covered everything, glowing faintly in shades of silver and blue. The air tasted different too, cleaner, sharper, electric with something she couldn't name. Where are we? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Speaking louder felt wrong somehow. Disrespectful. The Valewood. Kieran moved ahead of her, his steps sure despite the treacherous ground. It's the border between the pack territories and the wild lands. Most wolves won't cross it. They say it's cursed. Is it? No, he glanced back, and she caught the ghost of a smile. It's protected. By magic older than the Pax. Older than most living memory. Only those with permission can walk here safely. And we have permission? Talia does. Which means we do. He paused, waiting for her to catch up. You feel it, don't you? The weight of this place. She nodded. It pressed against her from all sides, not threatening but aware. Like the forest itself was watching them, judging whether they belonged. Her hand moved to her stomach, an unconscious gesture she'd developed over the past 2 days. The twins stirred beneath her palm, more active now. Their movements weren't just kicks anymore. They felt purposeful, like they were responding to the world around them in ways unborn children shouldn't be able to. Kieran noticed. He always noticed. Are they? They're awake. Kaya's voice carried a mixture of wonder and fear. More awake than they should be. It's like they know we're here. Like they're excited. Something flickered across Kieran's expression. Not surprise. Something deeper. The Valewood is one of the oldest sacred places left. If the prophecy is true, if they carry the essence of the first wolves, then this place is calling to them. Recognizing them. A shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with cold. That should terrify me. But it doesn't. No, she met his eyes. It doesn't. And I don't know if that makes me brave or stupid. Maybe both. He started walking again, and she followed. The best things usually are. They walked in silence for another hour, the forest growing thicker, the light dimmer. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, not animal, not wind, but something in between. Music without instruments. Voices without words. Kaya found herself listening, trying to catch meaning in the sounds, and realized with a start that she almost could. Like there was a language buried in the noise that her blood remembered even if her mind didn't. We're close, Kieran said suddenly. To the sanctuary? To something else first. He pushed aside a curtain of hanging moss, revealing a path that hadn't been visible before. Talia wanted you to see this. Before you met her. Before you made any decisions. Unease curled in Kaya's stomach. See what? The truth. The path led them deeper into the forest, down a slope where the trees gave way to stone. Ancient stone, carved and shaped by hands that had been dust for centuries. Columns rose from the ground, some broken, some still standing, forming a circle around a clearing. In the center stood an altar, simple, unadorned, but radiating power that made Kaya's teeth ache. The moon hung directly overhead despite the fact that it had been dusk moments ago. Full and impossibly bright, casting silver light that turned the clearing into something otherworldly. What is this place? Kaya breathed. The first temple. Kieran's voice carried reverence. Where the first wolves received their blessing from the moon goddess. Where the covenant between our kind and the divine was sealed in blood and silver. Kaya stepped into the clearing, and the moment her foot crossed the threshold, everything changed. The air ignited with light, not harsh or blinding, but soft, pervasive, seeping into her skin like water. The pendant against her chest grew hot, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. And inside her womb, the twins blazed to life with power that stole her breath. She gasped, stumbling, and Kieran was there instantly, steadying her. Easy. Let it happen. Don't fight it. What's happening? Her voice shook. The temple recognizes them. Recognizes you. His hands were firm on her shoulders, grounding her. You're safe. I promise. The light intensified, and suddenly Kaya wasn't in the clearing anymore. She stood in the same place, but it was different. Whole. The columns were intact, the altar gleaming, and around her stood wolves, dozens of them, but not like any wolves she'd ever seen. They were massive, their fur shimmering with colors that shouldn't exist. Silver that moved like liquid. Gold that burned like sun. Blue so deep it looked like staring into the night sky. And they were looking at her. No, not at her. At her stomach. One wolf stepped forward, larger than the others, its coat pure white, its eyes an impossible violet. When it spoke, its voice resonated inside her head, ancient and powerful and achingly kind. Child of the covenant, bearer of the future, you have been called. Kaya tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't work. The wolf seemed to understand. Do not fear. We are not here to harm. We are here to remind you of what you carry, of what you are. Another wolf approached, this one silver, its eyes gold. The bloodline was broken, diluted over centuries of mixing and forgetting. We thought it lost forever. A third wolf, midnight black with eyes like stars. But the goddess does not forget. She planted seeds in unlikely soil, waited for the right moment, the right vessel. You, the white wolf said, and its gaze was so intense Kaya felt it like a physical touch. Rejected, cast aside, broken by the one who should have cherished you. And in that breaking, the old magic woke, recognized you as worthy. Your children, the silver wolf continued, carry what we carried. The power of the first wolves. The ability to speak with gods. To channel the moon's blessing. To stand between this world and the darkness that seeks to consume it. The black wolf stepped closer. But power without wisdom is destruction. Strength without love is tyranny. They will need guidance, protection. And they will need you not as a vessel, but as their mother. Their anchor. Their first teacher. Kaya found her voice barely. I don't know how to do any of that. I'm just. You are exactly enough. The white wolf's voice was firm. The goddess chose you. Not despite your brokenness, but because of it. You know pain. You know rejection. You know what it means to stand when the world tells you to fall. And you will teach them these things. But first, the silver wolf said, you must understand what is coming. The clearing shifted, and suddenly Kaya was somewhere else. A battlefield. Wolves tearing at each other, blood soaking the ground. The sky above was wrong, not blue or gray, but a sickly green, and in that wrongness, shapes moved. Shadow beasts like the ones Kiran had described, but worse. Bigger. More numerous. They poured from the sky like rain, and wherever they touched, wolves died. Not just died. Unmade. Erased. This is what awaits if your children do not live, the black wolf said. This is what the darkness has been building toward. A world without wolves. Without the covenant. Without the moon's protection. The vision shifted again. Now she saw her children grown, powerful, standing together against the darkness. They moved with a grace and ferocity that took her breath away, their power manifesting as light that burned the shadow beasts to nothing. Around them, other wolves rallied, packs that had been enemies joining forces, fighting together, united by the presence of these two who carried the old blood. This is what they can become, the white wolf said. If they survive. If you survive. If you accept what you are. But the path will not be easy, the silver wolf warned. There are those who fear what your children represent, who will try to kill them before they can fulfill their purpose. You must be strong. Must be willing to fight. Must be willing to let others help you, the black wolf added, and Kaya understood it was talking about Kiran. About Talia. About the sanctuary she hadn't yet seen. The white wolf stepped forward until it was inches from her. We cannot walk in your world anymore. Our time has passed. But we are not gone. We live in the blood of your children. In the power that sleeps inside you. And when the moment comes, when you need us most, we will answer. It pressed its nose to her stomach, and warmth flooded through her. Not painful. Protective. Like a blessing sealed in light. Raise them well, little mother. Teach them to be strong and kind. Fierce and gentle. Powerful and humble. The world will need both their strength and their mercy. The vision shattered. Kaya gasped, stumbling back into Kiran's arms. The clearing was normal again, or as normal as an ancient temple could be. The wolves were gone. The light had faded to just the moon overhead. But the warmth inside her remained. And the twins. They were different now. She could feel it. Feel them. Not just as lives growing inside her, but as individuals. Distinct personalities. One fierce and protective, always moving. The other calmer, more thoughtful, but with a strength that felt like bedrock. Kaya? Kieran's voice was tight with concern. What did you see? She turned in his arms, looked up at his worried face, and realized she was crying. Not from fear. From something else. Something that felt dangerously like purpose. I saw the first wolves, she whispered. I saw what my children will become. And I saw, her voice broke. I saw the end of everything if they don't survive. Kieran's arms tightened around her. Then we make sure they survive. How? The question came out desperate. How do I protect them from something that wants to unmake the world? You don't do it alone. A new voice cut through the clearing, female, strong, carrying authority that made even Kieran straighten. You let people who've been preparing for this moment help you. Kaya turned, and her breath caught. A woman stood at the edge of the clearing. Tall, maybe 50, with silver hair that fell to her waist and eyes that glowed amber in the moonlight. She wore simple clothes, leather pants, a dark tunic, but she carried herself like royalty. Like someone who'd commanded armies and kingdoms and bent the world to her will through sheer force of presence. Scars marked her arms, her neck, her face, evidence of battles fought and survived. But they didn't diminish her beauty. They enhanced it. Made her look like what she was. A survivor. A warrior. An alpha who'd earned every ounce of respect she commanded. Kaya Thorne, the woman said, and her voice was warm despite its strength. I'm Talia Moonshadow. And I've been waiting a very long time to meet you. Kaya should have bowed. Should have shown proper respect to an alpha of Talia's reputation. But something in the woman's eyes stopped her. Not arrogance. Not demand. Just understanding. Like she knew exactly what Kaya had been through and wouldn't ask for submission she hadn't earned. You're the one who sent Kieran, Kaya said. I am. Talia stepped into the clearing, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. And I'm the one offering you sanctuary. But before you accept, before you trust me with your children's lives, you need to understand what I'm asking of you. And what's that? Talia stopped a few feet away, her amber eyes serious. To stop running. To stop hiding. To accept that those children growing inside you aren't just your babies. They're the future of every wolf in this kingdom. And to let me teach you how to protect them. How to train them. How to prepare them for the war that's coming. Kaya's hands moved to her stomach protectively. You want to turn them into weapons? No, Talia's answer was immediate. Firm. I want to teach them how to be what they already are. The first wolves reborn. And I want to make sure that when the darkness comes, and it will come, Kaya, make no mistake, they're ready. Not as weapons. As guardians. How do I know you're not like him? The question burst out before Kaya could stop it. How do I know you won't just use them and discard me like I'm nothing? Pain flickered across Talia's face, old, deep, never fully healed. You don't. You have to take a leap of faith. But I can tell you this, I lost my children to the darkness 20 years ago. My mate. My pack. Everything I loved. And I've spent every day since then working to make sure no one else has to feel that pain. So when I say I will protect your children with my life, I mean it. Because they're not just the future. They're my chance at redemption. The honesty in her voice was staggering. Raw. The kind of truth that couldn't be faked. Kaya looked at Kieran, who nodded slightly. Looked back at Talia, who waited with patient dignity. Looked down at her stomach, where two impossible lives pulsed with ancient power. And she thought about the vision. The shadow beasts. The world ending. Her children standing against the darkness. She thought about the first wolf's words. You must be willing to let others help you. Trust was a luxury she'd lost. But necessity? That was something else entirely. Okay, she said finally. Show me your sanctuary. Teach me how to protect them. But understand this, the moment I think you're using them, the moment I think you don't have their best interests at heart, I'm gone. And you'll never find me again. Talia's lips curved into a small, approving smile. Fair enough. I wouldn't expect anything less from a mother worth her salt. She held out her hand. Welcome to the Resistance, Kaya Thorne. We have a lot of work to do. Kaya stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. The moment their palms touched, power sparked between them, not hostile, but acknowledging. Two women who'd lost everything. Two survivors who refused to stay broken. Two protectors of lives that hadn't yet been born. And in that moment, standing in the first temple beneath the full moon with Kieran at her side and Talia's hand in hers, Kaya felt something she hadn't felt since the rejection. Hope. Real, solid, undeniable hope. Maybe the goddess hadn't abandoned her after all. Maybe this nightmare had been the path all along. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally exactly where she needed to be. The sanctuary wasn't what Kaya expected. She'd imagined something small. Hidden. A cave, maybe, or a cluster of cabins tucked away in the deep forest where no one would think to look. But as they crested the final ridge 2 hours after leaving the temple, what stretched before her stole the breath from her lungs. A valley. Vast and green, cradled between mountains so tall their peaks disappeared into clouds. And in that valley, a village. No, more than a village. A community. Dozens of structures built from stone and wood, smoke rising from chimneys, gardens bursting with late-season growth. She could see wolves moving between buildings, some in human form, some shifted, all moving with purpose. There are so many, she whispered. 237 at last count, Talia said from beside her. Refugees from packs that fell to the shadow beasts. Exiles who refused to bow to corrupt alphas. Lone wolves who'd given up hope until they heard we existed. Her voice carried quiet pride. We're not the largest sanctuary, but we're the strongest. Because everyone here chose to be here. Chose to fight. Kaya's throat tightened. She'd thought herself alone. Thought the rejection had marked her as uniquely broken, uniquely worthless. But looking at this valley full of survivors, she realized she was just one of many. One of hundreds who'd been cast aside by a world too blind to see their value. Come. Talia started down the path. I'll show you to your quarters. You'll want rest before. She stopped mid-sentence, her head snapping toward the valley. Every muscle in her body went taut. Kieran reacted instantly, moving in front of Kaya. What is it? Intruders. Talia's voice had changed, gone cold, hard, absolutely lethal. 3 of them. Just crossed the eastern boundary. Her eyes flashed gold as she reached for the wolf inside her. And they're moving fast. Toward the village. Kaya's blood turned to ice. Draven's hunters? Possibly. Talia was already moving, her speed inhuman even without shifting. Kieran, get her to the safe house. Now. I'm not leaving you two. That wasn't a request. Talia's command cracked like a whip. She's the priority. Those children are the priority. Move. Kieran grabbed Kaya's hand, but she resisted. What about the people in the village? If those hunters are like the ones who came after me, my people can handle themselves. Talia was already 50 feet away, her form beginning to blur as fur rippled across her skin. But you can't. Not yet. So run, little mother. And let us do what we do best. Then she was gone, shifting mid-stride into a massive silver wolf that disappeared into the trees with terrifying speed. Kaya. Kieran's voice was urgent. We need to move. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say she could fight, could help, could do something other than run and hide like she'd been doing for months. But the twins pulsed inside her, restless and afraid, and she knew he was right. Knew that in her condition, pregnant and untrained, she'd be a liability. So she ran. Kieran led her off the main path onto a narrow trail that wound through dense underbrush. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she kept moving, driven by terror and the primal need to protect what she carried. Behind them, howls erupted. Not just Talia. Dozens of voices rising in challenge and warning. The sanctuary's defenders responding to the threat. And beneath those howls, something else. Something wrong. A sound like metal scraping stone, like glass breaking, like reality tearing. Shadow beasts. They brought shadow beasts, Kaya gasped. Not just hunters. Actual. I know. Kieran's face was grim. Which means this isn't a random incursion. Someone told them where to find us. Someone betrayed the sanctuary's location. The trail ended at a structure built into the mountainside, half cave, half fortress, with walls of stone and a single reinforced door. Kieran pulled a key from his pocket and worked the lock with shaking hands. How do you know someone betrayed you? Kaya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Because the veil doesn't let just anyone through. You need permission. Blood permission, someone who's been here before, who knows the way. The door swung open, revealing a space lit by glowing crystals embedded in the walls. And the only people who have that are sanctuary residents. Which means someone inside helped them. Kaya's stomach turned. Just like Linnea helped Draven. Kieran ushered her inside and slammed the door, sliding 3 separate bolts into place. We'll worry about that later. Right now, you need to stay here. Stay quiet. These walls are reinforced with old magic. Nothing gets through without. An explosion rocked the valley. The sound was massive, apocalyptic, followed by screams. Kaya ran to the narrow window and looked out, her heart in her throat. Fire. The village was burning. Not normal fire, this burned green and black, consuming everything it touched. And in the midst of the flames, shadow beasts writhed. At least a dozen of them, their forms constantly shifting, never quite solid. Wolves fought them, Talia's defenders, brave and fierce, but for every beast they killed, 2 more seemed to appear. No, Kaya breathed. No. They're holding. Kieran stood beside her, his hands clenched into fists. Talia's fought shadow beasts before. She knows how to. Another explosion. This time closer. Close enough that the safe house shook, dust raining from the ceiling. And then Kaya heard it. A voice. Male. Amplified somehow, echoing across the valley. We know she's here. The Omega. The one carrying the abominations. The voice was cold, cultured, dripping with contempt. Surrender her, and we'll leave. Your village will be spared. Your people will live. Refuse, and we burn everything to ash. Kaya's blood froze. She knew that voice. Not personally, but by reputation. Every wolf in the territories knew it. Valen Nightshade. High Council member. One of the most powerful alphas in the kingdom. And Draven's strongest ally. He came himself, she whispered. Why would he? Because this isn't about retrieving pack heirs anymore. Kieran's face had gone pale. It's about making an example. Showing what happens when someone defies the council's authority. But I never. You survived a rejection. Conceived despite a severed bond. That alone makes you dangerous in their eyes. Add the prophecy, the power your children carry, and you're not just dangerous. You're a threat to their entire power structure. The voice boomed again. You have 5 minutes to decide. Surrender the Omega, or watch your sanctuary burn. Below, in the village square that Kaya could just see from the window, Talia emerged from the chaos. Even from a distance, Kaya could see the fury radiating from her. The absolute refusal to bow. We don't negotiate with tyrants, Talia's voice rang out, somehow matching Balin's in volume. And we don't surrender our own. If you want her, you'll have to go through all of us. A roar of agreement rose from the defenders. 200 voices united in defiance. Valen laughed. The sound was chilling. So be it. I give you a chance at mercy. Remember that when you're burying your dead. The shadow beasts surged forward as one. What followed was carnage. Kaya watched, helpless, as the wolves she'd never met fought and died to protect her. Watched Talia tear through shadow beasts with savage efficiency, her silver fur stained black with their essence. Watched Kieran pace the safe house like a caged animal, clearly desperate to join the fight, but bound by his promise to keep her safe. And she felt something inside her break. Not her spirit. Not her will. Something else. Something that had been holding her back, keeping her small, keeping her afraid. The first wolves had called her strong, had said she was chosen, had blessed her children and told her to accept what she was. But she'd been running, still hiding behind other people's courage while they bled for her. Not anymore. I have to stop this. She turned from the window, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. Kieran's head snapped toward her. Absolutely not. You can't. They're dying because of me. Her hands pressed against her stomach, feeling the twins' agitation. Because Valen wants what I carry. Because I'm too afraid to face him. You're pregnant. Untrained. You have no idea how to control your power. Kieran moved between her and the door. If you go out there, you'll die. And your children with you. If I stay here, everyone else dies. The truth of it settled over her like armor. And my children grow up knowing their mother let good people burn rather than stand up for them. What kind of lesson is that? It's the lesson that keeps them alive. No, Kaya's voice hardened. It's the lesson that teaches them to be cowards. And I won't do that. I won't. She moved toward the door, but Kieran blocked her path. Not threatening. Just immovable. I can't let you do this. You don't have a choice. She met his eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding. Respect. And the knowledge that he'd seen this coming. Had known from the moment he met her that she wouldn't be able to stand by while others suffered for her. If you die, he said quietly, it was all for nothing. Alara. My daughter. Everything I've done to protect you. All for nothing. Then make sure I don't die. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palm. Come with me. Stand beside me. Help me control this power. But don't ask me to hide. Not anymore. The battle raged outside. More explosions. More screams. The crackle of that wrong fire consuming buildings and lives. Kieran closed his eyes, conflict warring across his face. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. If we do this, he said, you follow my lead. Stay behind me. And the second I tell you to run, you run. Understood. Understood. He moved to a cabinet and pulled out weapons, silver blades, spelled for fighting shadow beasts. He strapped them to his body with practiced efficiency, then grabbed a cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. This won't protect you from much, he said as he fastened it. But it'll help shield your presence. Make it harder for them to identify you immediately. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he was doing. What he was risking. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. If we survive this, you and I are going to have a long talk about your self-preservation instincts. If we survive this, I'll listen to every word. He smiled, brief, tired, but real. Then he kissed her forehead. Quick. Chaste. But it burned through her like a brand. Let's go save some wolves, he said. They unbolted the door and stepped into chaos. The village was worse up close. Buildings collapsed. Bodies, both wolf and shadow beast, littered the ground. The green-black fire spread like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. And in the center of it all, Valen Nightshade stood in human form, watching the destruction with cold satisfaction. He was tall, elegant, dressed in fine clothes that didn't have a single speck of ash on them. Dark hair. Sharp features. Eyes that glowed with power and absolute certainty in his own superiority. And surrounding him a dozen more shadow beasts, held back like leashed dogs, waiting for his command. Talia fought 20 yards away, her silver fur matted with blood and black ichor. She was magnificent. Deadly. But even she was tiring. Even she couldn't hold forever. Kaya stepped forward, Kieran at her side, and raised her voice. Stop. The word rang out, and to her shock, everything froze. Not literally. But every head turned. Every wolf and beast paused mid-motion. Because something in her voice carried power. Carried the weight of the pendant burning against her chest. Carried the fury of the first wolves and the desperate love of a mother willing to die for her children. Valen's attention locked onto her, and his smile was slow and poisonous. There she is. The Omega who thinks she matters. I am Kaya Thorne. She threw back the hood of her cloak, meeting his gaze without flinching. And you will call off your beasts and leave this place. Or I will make you regret the day you learned my name. Valen laughed. You? You'll make me regret. He gestured, and the shadow beasts moved forward, circling her and Kieran. You're nothing. A broken wolf carrying stolen power. And when I cut those abominations out of you and study how they were made, the High Council will finally have what it needs to replicate their strength without depending on mongrel bloodlines. Rage flooded through her. Not hot. Cold. Absolutely lethal. And the twins responded. Light exploded from her body, silver and blinding, the same power that had saved her from the hunters, but magnified 100-fold. It didn't just push back the shadow beasts. It unmade them, tore them apart at a molecular level until nothing remained but screaming echoes. The pendant at her chest blazed like a star. And Kaya felt something wake inside her that she'd never known existed. Not just power. Purpose. She was the vessel. The guardian. The bridge between the old world and the new. And she was done being afraid. The light faded, leaving her standing in a circle of scorched earth. Every shadow beast within 50 feet was gone. And Valen, for the first time, looked uncertain. That's not possible, he breathed. You're Omega. You can't. I'm not Omega. Kaya's voice carried absolute conviction. I never was. I was dormant. Waiting. And now I'm awake. She took a step forward, and Valen actually retreated. Leave, she said. Take what's left of your beasts and go. Tell the High Council that if they come for me again, if they threaten these people or my children, I will burn their seats of power to ash. I will tear down everything they've built. And I will show them exactly why the first wolves were feared. Valen's face twisted with fury and fear. For a moment, she thought he'd attack. Thought he'd throw everything he had at her in one final, desperate assault. But then he saw Talia approaching from one side, Kieran from the other. And behind them, 200 wolves who'd just watched their newest member turn the tide of an unwinnable battle. He was outnumbered. Outmatched. And he knew it. This isn't over, he snarled. The council will hear of this. And they'll send more than me next time. Let them. Kaya's smile was sharp. Feral. I'll be waiting. Valen shifted, a massive black wolf with red eyes, and fled into the forest. His remaining shadow beasts followed, melting into darkness like nightmares retreating from dawn. And then it was just her, standing in the ruins of the village square, surrounded by wolves who stared at her with something between awe and fear. The light faded completely. The pendant cooled against her skin. And Kaya collapsed. Kieran caught her before she hit the ground, his arms strong and sure. I've got you. I've got you. Did we win? She whispered, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Yeah. His voice was thick with emotion. We won. Good. Her eyes fluttered closed. Because I'm never doing that again. She heard him laugh, relieved, slightly hysterical. Felt him lift her. Felt other hands reaching out, touching her gently. Grateful. And as consciousness slipped away, she heard Talia's voice, carrying across the square. She's one of us now. Under our protection. And anyone who touches her answers to me. A roar of agreement. A pax acceptance. For the first time in her life, Kaya belonged somewhere. And she'd fought to earn it. She woke to the scent of sage and cedar smoke. Her body felt like it had been torn apart and stitched back together with threads made of fire. Every muscle ached. Every breath took effort. But she was alive. And more importantly, her hands flew to her stomach. The twins were still there. Still pulsing with that ancient, impossible life. Easy. A gentle hand pressed against her shoulder, and she opened her eyes to find Mira sitting beside her bed. The old healer's face was lined with concern, but also something else. Pride, maybe. Or wonder. You've been asleep for 2 days. Your body needed time to recover from channeling that much power. 2 days. Kaya's throat was so dry she could barely speak. The village. Rebuilding. Mira held a cup of water to her lips, supporting her head while she drank. We lost 6 wolves in the attack. 32 were injured. But it could have been so much worse. If you hadn't stepped forward when you did, her voice caught. You saved us, child. You saved us all. Tears pricked Kaya's eyes. 6 dead. 6 lives lost because of her. Because Valen wanted what she carried. Because the High Council saw her children as threats instead of miracles. Their names, she whispered. The ones who died. I need to know their names. Myra's expression softened. Ronan Swiftpaw. Amaya Brightmoon. Stellan Ironclaw. Danica Mistwalker. Kaelin Stormheart. And Sable Shadowfen. She recited each name with reverence, giving them the respect they deserved. They died as warriors. Protecting their home. Protecting you. Kaya's chest tightened. She didn't know these wolves. Had never spoken to them, never laughed with them, never shared their stories. And yet they'd given their lives for her. For children they'd never meet. For a future they'd never see. I want to honor them, she said. However your people do it. Whatever ritual or ceremony, I want to be there. Talia thought you'd say that. Mira smiled gently. The memorial is tonight at moonrise. If you're strong enough to stand, you're welcome to attend. I'll be strong enough. It wasn't a question. It was a vow. Mira helped her sit up, and the room spun dangerously before settling. She was in a small chamber, the walls carved from living stone, warmed by a fire crackling in a stone hearth. Through the single window, she could see the valley, still scarred from the battle, but alive. Wolves moved between buildings, clearing debris, tending wounded, working together with the kind of unity that came from shared survival. Where's Kieran? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something knowing flickered across Myra's face. He hasn't left the sanctuary since he brought you here. Been checking on you every few hours. Drives me mad, honestly. Like I don't know how to tend a patient. But her tone was fond. Amused. Heat crept up Kaya's neck. We're not. Child, I've been reading people for 40 years. And that man looks at you like you hung the moon and painted the stars. Mira stood, gathering her herbs and supplies. Whether you want to admit it or not, there's something between you two. Something strong. He loved someone else. His mate. Alara. Loved. Past tense. Mira moved toward the door, then paused. Grief doesn't erase the capacity for new love. It just makes us more careful about where we place it. And from what I've seen, Kieran's been very careful about choosing you. She left before Kaya could respond, the door clicking softly shut behind her. Kaya sat in the quiet, her mind churning. She barely knew Kieran. Had only met him days ago. And yet he'd risked everything for her. Had stood by her side when she'd made the stupid, reckless decision to face Valen. Had looked at her like she mattered. Like she was worth protecting. Worth believing in. Worth. The door opened again, and speak of the devil. Kieran filled the doorway, his frame backlit by the setting sun. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, a fresh bandage wrapped around his forearm. But when he saw her awake, relief flooded his face so completely it almost hurt to witness. You're up. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Mira said you might sleep another day. I'm stubborn. Her voice came out rougher than intended. Someone recently told me it's going to get me killed. I said your self-preservation instincts would get you killed. There's a difference. He moved to the chair beside her bed and sank into it like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. How do you feel? Like I tried to hold lightning in my bare hands. She studied his face, the lines of exhaustion and worry etched deep. How long have you been awake? Doesn't matter. Kieran. 2 days. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up at odd angles. I wanted to make sure you were okay. That the twins were okay. That he stopped, jaw working. I needed to know you'd wake up. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. I'm sorry I scared you. You terrified me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the firelight caught the gold in his eyes. When you collapsed, when I couldn't feel your heartbeat at first, I thought, his voice broke. I thought I'd lost you. Both of you. And I realized something. What? That somewhere between finding you in that forest and watching you face down a High Council Alpha, I started caring about you. Not just because of the prophecy. Not just because of what your children represent. He met her gaze, and the intensity there stole her breath. Because you're brave and fierce and so damn stubborn you walked into an impossible fight rather than let others die for you. And I. He stopped himself, shaking his head. Forget it. You don't need this right now. Kieran. She reached out, her hand finding his. Say it. I can't. His fingers tightened around hers. You've been through too much. Lost too much. And I won't be another man who asks you for something you're not ready to give. What if I want you to ask? The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. She saw him war with himself, saw the longing and the restraint battling in his expression. You don't know what you want, he said finally. You're traumatized. Vulnerable. And I won't take advantage of that. Stop deciding what I can handle. She pulled her hand back, frustrated. I'm not fragile, Kieran. I'm not going to break just because someone shows interest in me. I know you're not fragile. His voice rose slightly. I've seen you fight shadow beasts and stare down alphas and survive things that would have destroyed anyone else. But you're also pregnant and terrified and still healing from a rejection that nearly killed you. So forgive me if I'm trying to be careful with you. I don't need careful. The words came out sharper than she intended. I need honest. I need someone who'll stop treating me like I'm made of glass. Fine. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You want honest? I'm falling for you. Have been since the moment you took my hand in that forest and trusted me despite every instinct telling you not to. And it scares the hell out of me because everyone I've ever loved has died. Everyone. And I can't, his voice cracked. I can't lose you too. The confession hit her like a physical blow. Not because she didn't want it. Because she did. Wanted it so badly it terrified her. I'm not her. Kaya forced herself to stand, her legs shaking but holding. I'm not Alara. And I can't replace what you lost. I don't want you to replace her. Kieran turned, and the anguish in his eyes was devastating. I want you to be you. Kaya. The woman who refuses to give up even when the world tells her she should. The mother who'd burn down kingdoms to protect her children. He stopped, swallowing hard. The person who makes me believe there's still something worth fighting for. She crossed the room slowly, each step an effort, until she stood in front of him. Close enough to feel his warmth. Close enough to see the scars on his soul that matched her own. I can't promise you forever, she said quietly. I can't promise I won't break or fall apart or do something stupid that gets us both killed. But I can promise you this, I see you. All of you. The grief and the guilt, and the man trying so hard to save everyone because he couldn't save the ones who mattered most. She placed her hand over his heart. And I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of you. His hand covered hers, pressing it tighter against his chest. You should be. I'm broken, Kaya. I've got pieces missing that I'll never get back. So do I. She smiled, sad but real. Maybe we can be broken together. Maybe that's enough. Something shifted in his expression. Cracked open. And before she could second-guess herself, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't passionate. Wasn't desperate or consuming. It was gentle. Careful. A question instead of a demand. And he answered. His arms came around her, pulling her close, but not crushing, his lips moving against hers with a tenderness that made her eyes burn. He tasted like pine and smoke and something wild, and she felt something inside her chest unfurl. Something that had been locked tight since the rejection. Not love. Not yet. But the possibility of it. The hope that maybe, just maybe, she could trust again. could let someone in without them destroying her. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "If we do this," he whispered, "if we try this, you have to promise me something." "What?" "That you'll tell me when it's too much. When I'm pushing too hard or moving too fast. That you won't just disappear because you're scared." His voice was rough. Raw. "I can handle rejection. I can handle you not being ready. But I can't handle you running without giving me a chance to fix it." "I promise." She meant it. "But you have to promise me something too. Anything. Stop blaming yourself for their deaths. Alara. Your daughter. Your pack." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "You couldn't have saved them. And torturing yourself won't bring them back. They'd want you to live, Kieran. Not just survive. Actually live." Pain flickered across his face, so deep and old it made her ache. But underneath it, she saw something else. Acceptance. Or the beginning of it. "I'll try," he said. "If you'll try to stop believing you're not enough. Deal." He kissed her again, brief, soft, perfect. Then he stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "You should rest. The memorial's in a few hours, and if you're planning to attend, you need your strength. Stay." The words slipped out before she could stop it. "Please. Just sit with me. I don't want to be alone right now." Something warm and vulnerable flashed across his face. "Okay, but you're getting back in that bed. Mira will have my head if I let you overdo it." She climbed back onto the bed, and he pulled the chair close, settling into it with a sigh. For a while, they just sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance and listening to the sounds of the village outside. His hand found hers, their fingers tangling together, and she felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't since before the rejection. "Tell me about her," Kaya said softly. "Alara. What was she like?" Kieran was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, he began to speak. "She was fierce. Had this laugh that could light up a room and a temper that could level mountains. She called me out on my bullshit constantly. Wouldn't let me get away with anything." His voice carried fondness and grief in equal measure. "We weren't fated mates. Just chose each other. And maybe that made it even more special. Because it wasn't destiny forcing us together. It was choice. Every single day, we chose each other." "She sounds amazing." She was. He looked at their joined hands. "And she'd probably kick my ass for wallowing this long. She always said I had a tendency toward melodrama." Kaya smiled. "I like her already. She would have liked you too. Would have said you had spine." He squeezed her hand. "And she would have told me to stop being an idiot and tell you how I feel. Smart woman. The smartest." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "Thank you. For asking. For not being threatened by her memory. She's part of who you are. I'd never ask you to forget her." Kaya's eyes grew heavy, exhaustion pulling at her. "Besides, any woman who could love you that completely has good taste." He laughed, surprised and genuine. "Rest. I'll wake you when it's time." She wanted to protest, wanted to keep talking, but her body had other ideas. The warmth of the fire, the safety of his presence, the simple comfort of not being alone, it all conspired to drag her under. Just before sleep claimed her, she felt him brush hair from her face, his touch achingly gentle. "I'll keep you safe," he murmured. "Both of you. I swear it." And for the first time in months, Kaya believed someone when they made her a promise. The memorial was held in a clearing at the heart of the valley, where 6 pyres had been built from sacred wood. The entire sanctuary gathered as the moon rose, 200 wolves standing in solemn silence, while Talia spoke the names of the fallen. Kaya stood between Kieran and Talia, her body still weak but held upright by sheer will. She watched as each pyre was lit, watched the flames climb toward the sky, carrying the spirits of the wolves who died protecting her. When it was her turn to speak, a choice Talia had offered and she'd accepted, she stepped forward, her voice clear despite the emotion choking her. "I didn't know Ronan, Amaya, Stellan, Danica, Kaylin, or Sable. I never got the chance to thank them for their courage, for their sacrifice. She placed her hands on her stomach, feeling the twins stir inside. But my children will know their names. Will know that 6 warriors stood against darkness so they could live. And when they're old enough to understand, I'll tell them that true strength isn't just power. It's choosing to fight for others when the cost might be your life. Her voice broke, but she pushed through. I promise you, all of you, that I will make their sacrifice mean something. I will raise my children to be worthy of the lives given to protect them. And I will never, ever forget what was done here tonight. The wolves howled a long, mournful sound that echoed across the valley and up to the stars. Kaya joined them, her voice raw and broken but strong, and felt the twins respond inside her. Not with sound, but with warmth. With understanding. They knew. Somehow, impossibly, they knew. When the howl faded and the pyres burned down to embers, Talia placed a hand on Kaya's shoulder. "Your pack now," she said quietly. "And we protect our own." Kaya looked around at the faces surrounding her, some marked by grief, some by determination, all by acceptance. These wolves who'd taken her in without question. Who'd bled for her. Who'd given her something she'd never thought she'd have again. A home. "Thank you," she whispered. And as Kieran's arm came around her waist, steadying her, supporting her, she felt something settle inside her chest. She'd been broken. Cast aside. Told she was worthless. But standing here, surrounded by pack and protected by a man who saw her value, she realized the truth. Draven hadn't diminished her by rejecting her. He'd freed her to become something greater. The weeks that followed the memorial should have been peaceful. Should have been a time for healing, for the sanctuary to rebuild, for Kaya to settle into this new life and prepare for the children growing stronger inside her with each passing day. The twins were more active now. She could feel distinct personalities emerging. One restless, always moving, pushing against her ribs like the world outside couldn't contain their energy. The other calmer but more intense, their presence a steady, watchful weight. Mira said they'd be born under the winter solstice. 3 months away. 3 months to prepare for children who would either save the wolves or doom them. No pressure. Kaya spent her days training with Talia, learning to control the power that had erupted during Balin's attack. It wasn't easy. The magic was wild, unpredictable, tied to her emotions in ways that made it dangerous. When she was calm, she could channel small amounts, enough to light a fire or move objects without touching them. But when fear or anger took hold, the power exploded outward like a bomb, leaving her drained and shaking. "You're fighting it," Talia said one afternoon as Kaya collapsed after another failed attempt to manifest a controlled barrier of light. "The power isn't separate from you. It's part of you. You have to stop treating it like an enemy and start treating it like breathing." "Breathing doesn't leave scorch marks on the ground," Kaya panted, staring at the blackened circle surrounding her. "It does if you're holding your breath and then suddenly gasping." Talia offered her a hand up. "The power responds to restriction. When you try to control it through force, it rebels. When you let it flow naturally, it becomes an extension of your will." That's very philosophical. Also completely unhelpful. Talia's lips quirked. "You sound like Kieran." Heat crept up Kaya's neck at the mention of his name. Their relationship, if it could be called that, had progressed in small, careful increments. Stolen moments by the fire. Quiet conversations under the stars. Kisses that were gentle and searching, both of them afraid to push too hard, too fast. He was patient with her in ways that made her chest ache. Never demanding. Never assuming. Just present. It was everything she'd wanted with Draven and had never received. And it terrified her how much she was starting to depend on it. "He's been good for you," Talia observed, watching her face. "I haven't seen him this settled in years." "Not since," she stopped herself. "Since Alara died." "You can say her name. I'm not threatened by a ghost." "Aren't you?" Talia's amber eyes were too knowing. "Because from where I'm standing, you're waiting for him to realize you're not her." Not enough. And you're preparing for the rejection before it can happen. The accuracy of it stole Kaya's breath. I don't. Child, I've lived 6 decades and survived more betrayals than you can imagine. I know what bracing for impact looks like. Talia's voice gentled. But Kieran isn't Draven. He's not going to wake up one day and decide you're not worth keeping. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can actually be happy. I don't know how to do that. Be happy. Trust that it won't be ripped away. None of us do. We just keep choosing it anyway. Every day. Every moment. Talia squeezed her shoulder. Now. Again. But this time, stop fighting the power. Let it be what it wants to be. Kaya centered herself, closed her eyes, and reached for the magic thrumming beneath her skin. This time, she didn't try to contain it. Didn't try to shape it into something controlled and small. She just let it exist. And it responded. Light bloomed around her, silver and soft, not explosive but steady. It wrapped around her body like a second skin, warm and protective and impossibly right. She opened her eyes and saw Talia smiling. There she is. The vessel the first wolves chose. Pride colored Talia's voice. Now hold it. Don't force it. Just hold it. Kaya maintained the light for 30 seconds before exhaustion forced her to release it. But 30 seconds was progress. Was proof that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to wield this power without destroying herself. They were walking back to the village when Kieran appeared on the path, his face grim. We have a problem. Talia's expression shifted instantly, the teacher disappearing behind the alpha. What kind of problem? The kind that involves the High Council sending an envoy. Kieran's jaw was tight. They arrived an hour ago under a banner of truce. 3 wolves. Led by someone you know. Kaya's stomach dropped. Who? Cashin Irvong. Draven's beta. The name hit her like a fist. Cashin. Draven's second in command. His most trusted advisor. The wolf who'd stood silent on the platform the night of her rejection and watched her collapse without offering a single word of protest. Why is he here? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Says he has a message from the High Council. A formal proposal. Kieran looked at Talia. He's asked to speak with you. Alone. But something feels wrong about this. Everything about the High Council feels wrong. Talia started walking again, her pace quickening. Where are they now? The meeting hall. Bryn's watching them. Armed. They reached the village center, where curious wolves had gathered, whispering among themselves. Kaya could feel their tension. Their fear. The last time the High Council had taken interest in the sanctuary, 6 wolves had died. The meeting hall was a large stone structure at the valley's heart, built for gatherings and councils. Talia pushed through the doors with Kieran and Kaya close behind, and Kaya's breath caught. 3 wolves stood in the center of the room, flanked by Bryn and 4 other sanctuary guards. They wore formal attire, leather and fine cloth marked with the High Council's silver sigil. 2 she didn't recognize. But the third. Cashin stood tall and imposing, his dark hair shot through with silver, his face carved from granite. He'd always been handsome in a severe, uncompromising way. But there was something different about him now. Something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Guilt, maybe. Or calculation. His gaze found Kaya, and she saw surprise flicker across his features. Kaya. I didn't expect. He stopped himself, jaw working. You look well. No thanks to you. The words came out cold. You stood there. Watched him reject me. Watched me nearly die. And you did nothing. I know. His voice was quiet. And I've regretted it every day since. Save it. Talia stepped between them, her presence radiating authority. You came here under truce, Cashin. State your business or leave. Cashin tore his gaze from Kaya and focused on Talia. The High Council wants to negotiate. They recognize that the attack by Valen Nightshade was excessive. Unauthorized. And they wish to make amends. Amends. Talia's voice dripped with skepticism. How generous. Let me guess. They want the Omega and her children in exchange for leaving us alone. No, Cashin's answer was firm. Immediate. They want to offer her protection. A seat at the table. Recognition of her children's status as legitimate heirs with rights and protections under Pack law. The silence that followed was deafening. Kaya stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? After Valen's failure and the reports of what you did, the power you displayed, the council has reassessed its position. Cashin pulled a scroll from his jacket and handed it to Talia. They're prepared to offer you a formal alliance. Resources. Safety. All they ask in return is that when your children come of age, they serve as bridges between the packs. Ambassadors of the old ways. Talia unrolled the scroll, her eyes scanning the contents. Her expression remained neutral, but Kaya saw her grip tighten on the parchment. This is too good to be true, Kiran said from beside Kaya. The council doesn't just forgive defiance. They punish it. Valen acted without full council approval, Cashin insisted. His faction wanted the children captured and controlled. But the majority see now that forcing cooperation will only create more resistance. They're willing to try a different approach. A different approach. Kaya's voice shook with barely contained fury. 6 wolves died because of Valen's approach. And now you want us to believe the council has suddenly grown a conscience. Cashin's expression softened, and she hated how genuine it looked. I know you have no reason to trust me. Trust any of us. But the council's offer is real. And it might be the best chance you have to keep your children safe. Or it's a trap. Talia lowered the scroll. A way to get her to lower her guard, so you can take what you want when she's vulnerable. It's not a trap. Cashin took a step forward, and immediately the guard's weapons rose. He stopped, hands raised. I swear on my honor as Beta. On my life. This offer is genuine. Your honor. Kaya laughed, the sound bitter. You stood beside Draven while he destroyed me. What's your honor worth? Pain flickered across his face. Real, deep pain. You're right. I failed you. I should have spoken up. Should have challenged him. But I was a coward. His voice dropped. And I've spent every day since trying to find a way to make it right. This is how you make it right? By delivering another council scheme. By giving you options. Cashin's eyes burned with intensity. You think you're safe here? The council knows where you are now. So do all the packs. Valen's attack might have failed, but it painted a target on this sanctuary. More will come. Stronger forces. And eventually, even Talia's defenses won't be enough. He's not wrong. Talia's admission was reluctant. Valen's assault revealed our location. We've already had scouts from 3 different packs testing our borders. Word is spreading. Kaya's stomach turned. She'd known their victory had come at a cost. But hearing it stated so baldly made it real in a way she'd been avoiding. So what? Kiran's voice was hard. She accepts the council's protection and puts herself at their mercy? Lets them dictate how her children are raised. The terms are negotiable, Cashin said. She'd have autonomy. Freedom to raise them as she sees fit. The council only asks for leverage. Kaya's voice cut through his explanation. They want my children close so they can control them. Use them. Turn them into weapons for whatever political games they're playing. That's not. Isn't it? She took a step forward, and Kiran's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. You said it yourself. They recognize the power my children carry. And the High Council doesn't offer alliances out of kindness. They do it because they want something. And what they want is to make sure my children grow up loyal to them instead of becoming threats. Cashin's jaw tightened, and she knew she'd hit the truth. The council fears what it can't control. Yes. But this offer is still better than the alternative. What alternative? War. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. If you refuse, if you continue to defy council authority, they'll have no choice but to declare the sanctuary and everyone in it rogue. And rogue wolves have no protections under pack law. No rights. No mercy. Talia's eyes flashed gold. They'd slaughter 200 wolves because one pregnant Omega won't bow to their authority? They'd do it to send a message. Cashin's voice was heavy. That defiance has consequences. That power without sanction is treason. I don't agree with it, but I know how they think. And if you reject this offer, you're signing a death warrant for everyone here. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Kaya looked around the room, at Talia's carefully neutral face, at Kieran's barely contained rage, at the guards whose hands trembled on their weapons, at Cashin, who stood in the center of it all looking like a man drowning in guilt. I need time, Kaya said finally. To think. To discuss this with. There is no time. Cashin's voice was urgent. The council gave me 3 days to return with your answer. I've already used one getting here. If I don't bring back your acceptance by tomorrow night, they'll assume refusal and act accordingly. That's not negotiation. That's coercion. That's reality. Cashin pulled another document from his jacket, smaller, sealed with wax. He held it out to Kaya. Draven asked me to give you this. Privately. I don't know what it says. But he insisted I deliver it. Kaya stared at the letter like it was a snake. I don't want anything from him. Then burn it. But at least take it. Cashin's expression was almost pleading. Please. Against her better judgment, she took the letter. It felt heavy in her hand, heavier than paper should be. The seal was Draven's personal mark, a wolf's head in profile. We'll give you our answer by tomorrow night, Talia said, her tone making it clear the meeting was over. You and your companions can stay in the guest quarters. But you don't leave the building without escort. And if any of you try anything, we won't. Cashin bowed slightly. You have my word. Your word is worth shit to me. But I'll take Kieran's blades at your throats as insurance. Talia jerked her head at Bryn. Escort them. Make sure they're comfortable. And watched. Bryn nodded and gestured for the 3 council wolves to follow. As they filed out, Cashin paused beside Kaya. I know you don't believe me, he said quietly. But I am sorry. For all of it. She didn't respond. Just watched him leave, the letter burning in her hand. When the doors closed, Talia turned to her. What do you want to do? I don't know. Kaya's voice was small. Is he telling the truth? Is the offer real? Parts of it, probably. But there's something else going on here. Something he's not saying. Talia's eyes narrowed. The timing is too convenient. The terms too generous. And threatening war if you refuse? That's desperation, not confidence. So what does that mean? It means they need you more than they're letting on. Kieran's voice was tight. And that makes you either incredibly valuable or incredibly dangerous. Kaya looked down at the letter in her hand. Draven's seal stared back at her, mocking. I should burn this. Shouldn't even open it. Probably, Talia agreed. But you won't. Because you need to know what he has to say. She was right. Damn her, she was right. Kaya needed to know what could possibly be important enough for Draven to write. What he thought he could say that would matter after everything he'd done. Read it, Kieran said softly. But not alone. Let me be there. In case it destroys me again? Kaya smiled, but it felt brittle. I'm stronger than I was. He can't hurt me anymore. Even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. They returned to Kaya's quarters, a small stone room she'd been given after proving herself in the battle. Kieran built a fire while Talia poured 3 glasses of whiskey, and Kaya sat on the bed staring at the letter. Want me to read it first? Kieran offered. Screen it for anything deliberately cruel? No. I need to do this. She broke the seal with trembling fingers and unfolded the parchment. The handwriting was Draven's, strong, angular, confident. Just like him. Kaya, I know you have no reason to listen to anything I have to say. I rejected you, cast you aside, called you weak and unworthy, and I will carry the weight of those actions for the rest of my life. But you need to know the truth. The rejection wasn't my choice. Kaya's breath caught. She read the words again, certain she'd misunderstood. The High Council came to me 6 months ago with a prophecy. One that said my true mate would bear children who could challenge their authority. children powerful enough to unite the packs under a new order. They gave me an ultimatum: reject you publicly, sever the bond, and they'd leave my pack alone. Refuse, and they'd declare Silvercrest rogue and slaughter everyone I'd sworn to protect. I thought I was saving my pack. Thought I was making the hard choice for the greater good. But I was a fool. Because the moment I severed our bond, I felt it, the wrongness. The absolute certainty that I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. And then I heard you were pregnant. That despite the broken bond, you were carrying my children. Twins. And I knew the council had played me. They'd used my fear against me to separate us, because together, we were too dangerous. I sent hunters to retrieve you because I thought I could fix it. Could bring you home, re-establish the bond, protect you and our children from the council's reach. But you ran. And I don't blame you. After what I did, running was the only rational response. The council's offer through Cashin is real. But it's also a trap. They want you close so they can monitor your children. Influence their development. Make sure they grow up loyal to council authority instead of challenging it. Don't accept their terms. Don't trust them. They've been manipulating us from the beginning, and they won't stop until they have what they want. I know I have no right to ask this. No right to ask anything of you. But please let me help. Let me fix what I broke. I'm still your mate, Kaya. The bond is damaged but not dead. I can feel you. Feel the children. And I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Even if that means admitting I was wrong. Even if it means begging forgiveness I don't deserve. Please. Just consider it. Draven. The letter slipped from Kaya's fingers and fell to the floor. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The words circled in her head like birds of prey, picking apart everything she thought she knew. The rejection wasn't his choice. The council had manipulated him. He wanted to fix it. Kaya. Kieran's voice was careful. What did it say? She couldn't answer. Could only stare at the letter on the floor like it was a bomb waiting to detonate. Talia picked it up, scanned the contents, and her expression darkened. Son of a bitch. What? Kieran demanded. He's claiming the rejection was coerced. That the council threatened his pack to force him to sever the bond. Talia's voice was cold. And now he wants her back. Wants to play hero and fix everything. Is it true? Kaya's voice was barely a whisper. Could the council have? It's possible. Talia set the letter on the table. The council has used threats to control alphas before. Force them into choices that serve council interests. But even if it's true, it doesn't change what he did. Kieran's voice was hard. He chose his pack over his mate. Rejected her in front of everyone. Let her believe she was worthless. And now that he knows about the children, suddenly he wants her back? That's not love. That's ownership. Maybe. Kaya's hands trembled in her lap. Or maybe he was trying to protect hundreds of lives. Made an impossible choice. And her voice broke. I don't know what to believe anymore. You believe what you feel. Talia knelt in front of her, forcing eye contact. When you read those words, what did you feel? Relief? Hope? Or anger? Kaya closed her eyes, searching inside herself for the truth. And what she found wasn't relief or hope. It was rage. Pure, white-hot rage. He let me think I was nothing, she whispered. For months. Let me believe the mate bond was disgusted by what I was. And even if the council forced his hand, even if he thought he was protecting his pack, he could have told me. Could have explained. Could have given me the truth instead of letting me shatter. Yes. Talia's voice was firm. He could have. And he didn't. Because he made a choice about what mattered more. And it wasn't you. The truth of it settled into her bones. Draven might have been manipulated. Might have thought he was doing the right thing. But he'd still chosen to break her rather than trust her with the truth. Still chosen to let her suffer rather than face the council together. And that choice told her everything she needed to know about where she stood in his priorities. I'm not going back to him, Kaya said, her voice steady now. Certain. And I'm not accepting the council's offer. I don't care if it's real or a trap. I won't put my children's future in the hands of people who've already proven they'll sacrifice anyone to maintain power. That leaves war. Kieran's voice was quiet. Then we prepare for war. Kaya stood, her hand moving to her stomach. Because I'd rather fight and die free than live as the council's puppet. Talia smiled, sharp and dangerous and proud. Now you sound like an alpha. I'm not an alpha. I'm just a mother who's done being afraid. Kaya looked at both of them. And I'm trusting you to help me keep my children alive when the council comes for us. Because they will come. And when they do, I want to be ready. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The war was coming. And Kaya would meet it on her own terms. Or die trying. The council's answer came 3 days later. Not with words. With fire. Kaya woke to screams and the acrid smell of smoke. She bolted upright in bed, her heart hammering, the twins thrashing inside her with agitation that bordered on panic. Through her window, she could see the eastern sky glowing orange, not dawn, but flames. Big ones. Kieran burst through her door without knocking, already armed, his face grim. We need to move. Now. What's happening? The council didn't wait for our answer. He crossed to her in 3 strides and began helping her dress, his movements efficient but gentle. They've sent an army. At least 300 wolves. And they're not here to negotiate. Kaya's blood turned to ice. Cashin. Gone. He and his companions slipped away last night. Bryn found the guards we'd posted outside their quarters unconscious. Drugged. Kieran's jaw was tight with fury. The bastard was a distraction. Kept us focused on his fake offer while the council moved their forces into position. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised her. Should have been expected after everything. But it still cut deep, the knowledge that Cashin had looked her in the eye, apologized, and then helped orchestrate an attack that could kill everyone she'd come to care about. Where's Talia? Organizing the defense. But Kaya, he cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. There are too many. Even with our fighters, even with the sanctuary's defenses, we can't hold against 300. Talia's buying time for the non-combatants to evacuate through the northern tunnels. And us. You're evacuating. I'm staying to fight. Like hell. She pulled away from him, moving to grab her own weapons, a silver knife Talia had given her, spelled for fighting shadow beasts. I'm not running while everyone else dies for me. You're 7 months pregnant with twins who could save our entire species. Kieran's voice rose. This isn't about pride or proving yourself. This is about survival. Your survival. Their survival. And what about yours? She turned on him, fury and fear warring in her chest. You think I can just leave you here to die? Think I can run away knowing I might never? Her voice broke. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I've just what? His voice gentled, even as chaos erupted outside. Just started believing I could have something good again. The confession tore out of her. Just started trusting that maybe the moon goddess didn't completely abandon me. And if I run now, if I let you stay behind while I escape, then what was the point of any of it? Kieran crossed to her and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. The point is that you live. That those children live. That everything we've fought for doesn't die in this valley. He pulled back, just enough to look at her. I'm not planning to die today. But if it comes down to your life or mine, I'm choosing yours. Every time. Without hesitation. That's not fair. No. But it's true. He kissed her hard, desperate, filled with all the words they hadn't said yet. When he pulled away, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Now go. Please. Before I lose my nerve and keep you here where I can see you. A massive explosion rocked the building. Stone dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer, howls and screams, and the clash of weapons. Take the northern tunnel, Kieran said, already moving toward the door. Myra's leading the evacuation. She'll get you somewhere safe. Kieran. I love you. The words stopped her cold. I know it's too soon and you're not ready to hear it, and I should have waited. But I'm saying it now because I might not get another chance. I love you, Kaya Thorne. You and those impossible children. And I will fight with everything I have to make sure you all survive this. Then he was gone, disappearing into the smoke and chaos before she could respond. Before she could tell him she loved him too. The building shook again, harder this time. Kaya stood frozen for precious seconds, torn between following Kieran into battle and protecting the children inside her. The twins pulsed with frantic energy, and she felt their fear as clearly as her own. We need to keep them safe, some instinct whispered. They're what matters. They're the future. But Kieran mattered too. And Talia. And all the wolves fighting and dying outside because the High Council wanted to control what she carried. She made her decision. Not to run. Not to hide. But to end this. The northern tunnel entrance was chaos. Wolves streamed through, mothers carrying children, elders moving as fast as their aged bodies allowed, wounded being half-dragged by those still able to fight. Mira stood at the tunnel mouth, directing traffic with calm authority, despite the blood splattered across her healer's robes. Kaya. Relief flooded the old woman's face when she spotted her. Thank the goddess. Come, quickly. The tunnel leads to. I'm not evacuating. Kaya's voice was steady. I need you to do something for me. Myra's expression shifted to alarm. Child, you can't possibly think. The twins are agitated. More agitated than they've been since I got here. Kaya placed her hands on her swollen stomach, feeling them thrash inside. They can sense the danger. The darkness. And I think she swallowed hard. I think they want to fight. They're unborn. Myra's voice was sharp. They can't. They're the children of the first wolves. They've been aware since before they should have been. They've responded to power and emotion and places of ancient magic. Kaya met Myra's eyes. What if they can do more? What if the reason the council is so desperate to control them is because even now, even unborn, they're strong enough to make a difference? That's madness. The strain alone could kill you. Could kill them. And if I run? If I let 300 wolves slaughter everyone here while I hide in a tunnel? That kills something too. Maybe not my body, but my soul. Kaya's voice dropped. I need to know I tried. Need my children to know their mother stood up when it mattered. Please, Mira. Tell me how to channel their power. How to let them help without destroying all of us in the process. The old healer stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, understanding dawned across her weathered face. The pendant. The one I gave you. Kaya's hand moved to the silver disc hanging against her chest. It was warm, warmer than it should be, pulsing in rhythm with the twins' agitated movements. It was crafted by my ancestors for exactly this purpose, Mira said quickly, urgently. To help the vessel channel the power of unborn children blessed by the first wolves. It creates a buffer. Lets the power flow through without consuming the mother. Will it work? I don't know. It's never been tested. The last time the bloodline manifested was 300 years ago, and that vessel refused to fight. Chose to hide until her children were born. Myra's eyes were fierce. But you're not her. And maybe that's what the goddess has been waiting for. A mother brave enough to claim the power instead of fearing it. Another explosion. Closer now. The tunnel wall shook. How do I activate it? Kaya asked. You don't. The pendant will activate when it senses you need it. When you're willing to fully surrender to the power instead of fighting it. Mira gripped her shoulders. But Kaya, once you open that door, you can't close it easily. The twins will be part of you in a way they weren't before. Connected. Aware. You'll feel everything they feel. And they'll feel everything you feel. Good. Kaya's voice was hard. Then they'll know exactly how much I love them. And how far I'll go to protect them. She turned and ran back toward the battle. The village square was hell. Wolves fought in clusters, Talia's defenders outnumbered 3-1 but refusing to yield. She spotted Talia immediately, her massive silver form tearing through enemies with ruthless efficiency. Kieran fought nearby, his blades flashing silver in the firelight. And scattered around them, council wolves pressed forward in waves. But it wasn't just wolves. Shadow beasts writhed through the chaos, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, their forms constantly shifting from solid to vapor. And commanding them, standing on the raised platform where they'd held the memorial just weeks ago, was Valen Nightshade. But he wasn't alone. Draven Blackthorn stood beside him. The sight of him stole Kaya's breath. Her former mate. The alpha who'd rejected her. The man who'd claimed in his letter that he'd been forced to choose, that he wanted to fix things. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the wolf who'd tried to kill her. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that for a moment she couldn't move. Couldn't think. Could only stare at the man she'd once loved, still loved, some broken part of her whispered, as he surveyed the carnage with cold calculation. Then his eyes found hers across the chaos. And something flickered across his face. Shock. Longing. Regret. But underneath it all, determination. He'd made his choice. And it wasn't her. The pendant at her chest flared hot. The twins inside her blazed to life with power that made her gasp. And Kaya felt the door Mira had warned her about swing wide open. Power flooded through her. Not just her power. Theirs. The twins. Their ancient, impossible magic channeling through her body like lightning through a rod. The pendant glowed so bright it turned the entire square silver, and every wolf, friend and enemy alike, froze. Kaya stepped forward, and the crowd parted before her. Not from respect. From fear. Enough. Her voice carried across the valley, amplified by magic. All of you. This ends now. Valen recovered first, his lips curling into a sneer. The Omega thinks to command us? How delightful. He gestured, and the shadow beasts surged toward her. Kaya raised her hands. And the world ignited. Silver light erupted from her body, not explosive this time, but controlled. Directed. It swept across the square in a wave that consumed every shadow beast it touched. They didn't just die. They were unmade. Erased from existence so completely that not even echoes remained. The silence that followed was deafening. Kaya stood in the center of it all, glowing like a star, and felt the twins inside her singing with joy. This was what they were meant for. What they'd been created to do. Not to hide. Not to run. But to stand against darkness and burn it away. I am not Omega. Her voice rang with power. I am the vessel of the first wolves. Mother to the children who will restore what was lost. And I will not bow to a council that sees life as currency and power as something to be hoarded. You're an abomination. Valen's face twisted with fury. You and those things you carry. The council will never accept. The council doesn't speak for all wolves. A new voice cut through the square. Strong. Female. Familiar. Talia shifted back to human form, standing tall despite the blood covering her body. I am Talia Moonshadow, Alpha of the Sanctuary. And I formally challenge the High Council's authority over this valley and all who shelter here. A ripple of shock ran through the assembled wolves. Challenging council authority was treason, punishable by death. But others stepped forward. Kieran. Bryn. Dozens of sanctuary wolves. And then, shockingly, some of the council's own forces. Wolves who'd come to fight, but now stood uncertain, staring at Kaya like they'd seen a vision. You can't be serious. Valen looked around, his confidence cracking. You choose this pregnant freak over centuries of pack law? I choose freedom. Talia's voice was steel. I choose a future where power serves the people instead of controlling them. And I choose her. Because she's proven she's willing to fight for others instead of just herself. More wolves stepped forward. The tide was shifting. What had been an overwhelming force now looked fractured. Uncertain. And Draven hadn't moved. Hadn't spoken. Just stood frozen on the platform, staring at Kaya like his world was ending. You have a choice, Kaya called out to the assembled council wolves. You can keep fighting for leaders who'd sacrifice you to maintain their power. Or you can stand down, walk away, and let us build something better. And if we refuse? Valen snarled. The twins pulsed inside her, and Kaya felt their hunger, their readiness to do whatever was necessary. Then I show you exactly why the first wolves were gods among wolves. Her eyes blazed silver. And you learn why some powers should never be controlled. For a long moment, no one moved. The entire valley held its breath. Then one council wolf stepped back. Then another. And another. The army was fragmenting, dissolving. Wolves choosing to retreat rather than face the power radiating from Kaya's body. Valen looked around, his face contorting with rage. Cowards. All of you. The council will hear of this. Will punish. The council, Draven's voice finally rang out, has overstepped. Every head turned to him. Kaya's heart seized. He stepped forward, his eyes locked on her. Valen promised the attack would be surgical. That civilian casualties would be minimal. He looked at Kaya, and the anguish in his face was devastating. That you would be taken alive. Unharmed. So we could discuss terms. More lies. Kaya's voice shook. Just like the rejection. Just like everything. No, Draven descended from the platform, and wolves parted before him. The rejection was a mistake. A choice I made in fear. But this, he gestured at the burning buildings, the bodies. This wasn't what I agreed to. This is slaughter. And I won't be part of it. He stopped 10 feet from her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his face. The grief. I should have trusted you, he said quietly. Should have told you the truth about the council's threats. Should have stood beside you instead of pushing you away. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for that. Pretty words. Kieran appeared at Kaya's side, his blade still drawn. But they don't change the fact that you're here, leading an army against her. I came to stop this. Draven's eyes flicked to Kieran, then back to Kaya. When Valen revealed his true plan, to raise the sanctuary and take you by force, I tried to stop it. Tried to call off the attack. But the council overruled me. Said I'd forfeited my vote when I failed to control my own mate. I'm not your mate. Kaya's voice was cold. You made sure of that. The bond is damaged. Not dead. Draven took another step forward. I can still feel you. Feel the children. And his voice cracked. They're magnificent, Kaya. Everything I could have hoped for. Everything I threw away. The twins stirred inside her at his words. Not with recognition. With rejection. They didn't know him. Didn't want him. They'd only ever known Kieran's presence, Kieran's protection. And Kaya realized something that made her chest ache. Draven wasn't their father. Not in any way that mattered. He was just the wolf who'd donated genetics. Nothing more. You need to leave, she said. Take what's left of your forces and go. Because if you stay, I can't promise your safety. I'm not leaving without you. Then you're not leaving. The pendant flared, and power crackled around her fingers. Because I'm done being something you decide to want when it's convenient. Done being a prize you fight over. I am not an object. Not a vessel you get to claim. I am a person. A mother. And I choose who stands beside me. She turned to Kieran, and the look in his eyes, fierce and proud and absolutely devoted, made her decision easy. I choose him. I choose this sanctuary. I choose a future where my children are free. She looked back at Draven. And I choose to never see you again. Something in Draven's face crumbled. Kaya, please. You made your choice 6 months ago. This is mine. She raised her voice, addressing the entire valley. Anyone who stands with the council. Anyone who thinks they can take my children by force. Leave now. Or face what happens when you push a mother too far. The silver light intensified and thunder rumbled overhead despite the clear sky. The twins were feeding her power. Unlimited. Endless. Enough to level mountains. Enough to protect what mattered. The remaining council wolves broke and ran. Even Valen, proud, arrogant Valen, retreated, his form shifting as he disappeared into the forest. Only Draven remained. "I love you," he said, his voice breaking. "I know I have no right. No, I destroyed any chance we had. But I need you to know I love you. And I will never stop regretting what I did." "I know." Kaya's voice was soft now. Sad. "But love without trust is just empty words. And I can't trust you, Draven. Not anymore. Maybe not ever again." He nodded slowly, accepting, broken. Then he turned and walked away, his shoulders bowed under the weight of what he'd lost. And Kaya felt the mate bond that damaged, barely their connection, finally sever completely. She gasped as it snapped, the pain sharp but brief. And then, freedom. Pure, absolute freedom. She wasn't his anymore. Wasn't anyone's but her own. The light around her faded. The power receded. And she collapsed into Kieran's waiting arms. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "Always. I've got you." Around them, the sanctuary wolves began to cheer. Not a roar of victory. Something quieter. More reverent. The sound of a people who'd just witnessed the birth of something new. A new order. A new way forward. And at the center of it all, a mother who'd claimed her power and used it to protect instead of destroy. "Is it over?" Kaya whispered. "For now." Talia approached, her face grave despite their victory. "But the council won't forget this. Won't forgive it. This was a battle. But the war, the real war, is just beginning. Let it come." Kaya straightened in Kieran's arms, her hand on her stomach. "Because I'm not afraid anymore. And when these children are born, when they take their first breaths, the wolves will finally have what they've been missing." "What's that?" Talia asked. Kaya smiled, fierce and dangerous and absolutely certain. "Hope. #section 9 emotional cliffhanger and CTA. Will you choose her side?" 3 months later, the first snow fell. Kaya stood at the window of her quarters, watching fat white flakes drift down over the valley that had become her home. The sanctuary had been rebuilt, stronger this time, with defenses both physical and magical woven into every stone. Wolves who'd heard about the battle had trickled in over the weeks, seeking shelter, seeking purpose, seeking the promise of something better than what the High Council offered. The community had doubled in size. 463 wolves now called this place home. And in a few hours, it would have 2 more. The contractions had started at dawn. Gentle at first, barely noticeable. But they were growing stronger now, more insistent. The twins were coming. Right on schedule, just as Mira had predicted. Winter solstice. The longest night of the year. The night when the old magic was strongest. "You should be in bed." Kieran's voice came from behind her, warm and concerned. His arms wrapped around her from behind, his hands settling over her impossibly swollen stomach. "Mira said you need to conserve your strength." "I will. Soon." She leaned back against his chest, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "I just wanted to see it. The snow. The valley. All of this, before everything changes." "Everything's already changed." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But I know what you mean." The twins kicked, strong and insistent, and Kieran laughed. "They're impatient. Just like their mother. Their mother who walked into battle 7 months pregnant and faced down an army." Kaya smiled despite the pain building in her lower back. "I think I've earned the right to be a little impatient." "More than a little." His voice softened. "Are you scared?" She thought about lying. About being strong and brave and all the things everyone expected her to be. But this was Kieran. The man who'd seen her at her weakest and hadn't flinched. Who'd stood beside her when the world told him to run. Who'd chosen her every single day since that night in the forest. Terrified, she admitted. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough? What if—" "You are." He turned her gently to face him, his amber eyes fierce. "You're exactly strong enough. You've survived rejection, exile, assassination attempts, and a battle against 300 wolves. You channeled the power of the first wolves through your body and didn't break. You can do this. But what comes after? Her voice dropped to a whisper. What if they're born and the power I felt, the power they carry, what if it's too much? What if the world really isn't ready for them? Then we teach them to be more than just power. Kieran cupped her face in his hands. We teach them to be kind and fierce, strong and gentle. Everything you are. Everything they need to be. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Kaya gasped, her hands gripping his arms. Kieran's face went pale. That's it. We're getting Mira. Now. The next hours blurred together in a haze of pain and power and primal instinct. Myra's calm voice guiding her. Talia holding one hand while Kieran held the other. The sensation of her body tearing itself apart to bring forth life. And, through it all, the twins. Aware. Present. Fighting alongside her to be born. The first child came as the sun set, a girl, tiny and perfect, with a lusty cry that echoed through the room. But it wasn't her cry that made everyone freeze. It was the light. Silver light radiated from her newborn skin, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her eyes, when they opened, glowed with ancient power. And in that moment, every wolf in the sanctuary felt it. A pressure against their souls. A presence that declared itself. The first wolf reborn. She's beautiful, Kieran breathed, his voice thick with awe. She's terrifying, Mira corrected, but there was wonder in her voice too. I've never seen anything like her. The second child came an hour later, a boy, quieter than his sister, but no less powerful. His light was different. Not silver but gold, warm and steady like sunlight. Where his sister's presence felt like lightning, his felt like bedrock. Unshakable. Eternal. Two children. Two halves of a whole. Balance personified. Kaya held them both against her chest, exhausted and overwhelmed and absolutely in love. They were so small. So fragile. And yet she could feel the power thrumming beneath their skin. Could sense the destiny that waited for them. What will you name them? Talia asked softly. Kaya looked down at her daughter, fierce and bright and utterly fearless even minutes old. Lyra. After the constellation. Because she's going to shine so bright the whole world will see her. Then at her son, calm and steady and somehow ancient despite his newborn body. And Orion. The hunter. Because he's going to stand guard over everything we build. Lyra and Orion. Kieran tested the names, and a smile spread across his face. Perfect. They're perfect. A commotion outside drew everyone's attention. Raised voices. The sound of someone arguing with the guards. Talia moved to the door, opening it to reveal Bryn looking harried. Forgive the interruption, Alpha. But we have a situation. What kind of situation? Messengers. From 3 different packs. All arriving within the last hour. Bryn's expression was grim. Word has spread about the birth. About what the children are. And everyone wants a piece of them. Kaya's voice was flat. Not surprised. Just tired. Let me guess. Offers of alliance. Threats if we refuse. Demands to see them, study them, verify the prophecy. Bryn nodded. The High Council has also sent an envoy. Under banner of truce. They're requesting, demanding, a formal hearing to determine the children's status under pack law. Kieran's hand moved to his blade. Tell them to go to hell. We can't. Talia's voice was heavy. Not without starting an all-out war. The sanctuary is strong, but we can't stand against every pack in the kingdom. Not yet. So what do we do? Kaya looked down at her children, her perfect, impossible children who'd been born into a world that would either worship them or try to destroy them. How do we keep them safe? We do what we've always done. Talia moved back to the bed, her expression fierce. We adapt. We fight. And we refuse to let anyone else define what these children become. She looked at Lyra and Orion, and something shifted in her face. Not just pride. Purpose. The council wants a hearing? Fine. We'll give them one. We'll bring these children before every pack in the kingdom and let them see the truth. Let them see that the old ways aren't dead, that the first wolves have returned, and that trying to control them will only bring ruin. That's a huge risk, Kieran protested. Putting them on display like that. Everything is a risk now. Kaya's voice was steady despite her exhaustion. The moment they were born, the moment the world felt their power, we lost the option of hiding. So we don't hide. We stand in the light and dare anyone to challenge us. She looked at Kieran, at Talia, at Mira who'd helped her through the birth, at the children in her arms who would either save the wolves or watch them fall. I'm done running. Done hiding. Done letting others decide my children's fate. Her voice rang with conviction. The council wants to meet them? Let them come. Let everyone come. And let them see exactly what happens when you try to cage the children of the first wolves. Lyra chose that moment to open her eyes fully silver and ancient and absolutely fearless. And Kaya could have sworn her newborn daughter smiled. Not a baby's reflexive expression. Something knowing. Something that said she understood exactly what was being asked of her. And she was ready. The winter wind howled outside, shaking the shutters. In the valley below, preparations were already beginning. The sanctuary transforming from refuge to stronghold. Because the battle 3 months ago had been just the opening move. The real war was coming. The war for the future of every wolf in the kingdom. For the right to determine who held power and how it was used. And at the center of it all, 2 children barely hours old, glowing with the light of extinct gods. Kaya looked out the window one last time, watching snow cover the scars from the last battle. Watching her people move with purpose and determination. Watching Kieran speak quietly with Talia, planning, strategizing, preparing for what came next. She'd been broken once. Rejected. Told she was worthless. Too weak to matter. But the woman she'd become, the mother holding the future in her arms, wasn't weak. She was forged steel. Unbreakable. Unstoppable. And she would burn down the world before she let anyone harm her children. The question wasn't whether she'd fight. It was whether the world was ready for what she'd become. Would you have chosen her side, or feared her too? Would you have stood with a rejected Omega carrying impossible power? Or would you have backed away, called her dangerous, called her children abominations? Because that's the choice every wolf in her world is facing now. The choice between the comfortable tyranny of the High Council and the terrifying freedom she represents. She didn't ask for this destiny. Didn't ask to be the vessel of ancient magic. Didn't ask to be thrust into a war between the old ways and the new. But she's here. Standing at the edge of everything. 2 newborn children in her arms and an entire kingdom watching to see what she'll do next. And the truth is, even she doesn't know yet. Will she become the savior the prophecy promised? Or will the weight of impossible expectations crush her before her children take their first steps? Will the man who rejected her realize what he lost and try to reclaim it? Will Kieran's love be enough to anchor her when the darkness comes? Will the High Council see reason, or will they bring armies that make their first attack look like mercy? These are the questions that keep her awake at night. The fears that whisper in the darkness. The possibilities that shimmer on the horizon like heat mirages, never quite solid, never quite real. Because here's what the prophecies don't tell you: power doesn't make you invincible. It just makes you a bigger target. And love, real, messy, complicated love, doesn't solve everything. It just gives you something worth fighting for when the world tries to tear you apart. Kaya Thorne started as nothing. An Omega rejected by her mate. Cast aside. Broken. But she refused to stay broken. She picked up the pieces. Found her strength. Claimed power that should have destroyed her. And gave birth to children who might reshape the world. The question now isn't whether she's strong enough. It's whether the world is ready for how strong she's become. Because the rejected Omega who ran through the forest in the rain, desperate and terrified, she's gone. In her place stands something far more dangerous. A mother. A protector. A woman who's learned that the only person who gets to define her worth is her. And she's just getting started. So I'm asking you, would you stand with her? Would you believe in children blessed by ancient magic and a mother who refuses to bow? Or would you watch from the sidelines, waiting to see which way the wind blows before committing? Because neutrality is a choice too. And in the war that's coming, everyone will have to pick a side. If this story lit something inside you, if Kaya's journey from broken to unbreakable made you feel something real, then you need to subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because this is what we do here. We tell stories about women who refuse to stay broken, about love that heals instead of harms, about power that protects instead of destroys. We tell stories where the rejected become the chosen, where the weak become warriors, where the discarded become irreplaceable. Stories that burn. And if you want to see what happens next, if you need to know whether Kaya's children fulfill the prophecy or shatter under its weight, if you're desperate to find out whether she and Kieran build something lasting or if the ghosts of their pasts tear them apart, then hit that subscribe button. Join Shayla's Romance Library. Become part of a community that believes broken doesn't mean worthless. Because Kaya's story isn't over. It's just beginning. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. The High Council is gathering its forces. Old enemies are becoming unlikely allies. And deep in the northern wastes, something ancient and terrible has woken. The shadow beasts were just the beginning. The real darkness is coming. And when it arrives, Kaya and her children will stand between it and every wolf who's ever dared to hope for something better. So choose your side. Subscribe. And let's see together whether love and power and stubborn refusal to give up are enough to change the world. Or whether some destinies are too heavy for even the strongest shoulders to carry. Either way, it's going to be one hell of a ride. Welcome to Shayla's Romance Library, where the stories burn bright and the heroes refuse to stay down.